Jen, you all set? We are. Good.
Yeah.
Ray, you're all set? Oh, I didn't get a text. What we waiting on? Nothing. Jen just sent me. What's that? Sandra, Juan, got it fixed?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, good evening, everybody. We apologize for the delay. It's our first night as a council. We were having a meeting prior to this. We covered our collective bargaining for both the police union and also the PMEA union, which is the town clerks unions. And then we had an update from our solicitor on any pending litigation that is against the town for the new counselors. Since I haven't done a Zoom meeting yet, it's been that long. This meeting is also being Zoomed and live streamed. To access, you can dial in by phone at 1-888-788-099, or you can join us on Zoom. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and dial 9. The host will be notified and will ask you if you dial 6 to mute and unmute yourself. During executive session, there were no votes taken. If we can now all please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for all our men and women in harm's way. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. In case of emergency this evening, if there is any emergency, we have 3 exits behind you. We also have the exit to your right, my left, the door that you came in. If you'd all please, well, since it's pouring rain out, head back to your cars and wait for further word from the fire or the police department. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Gleason.
Here.
Ms. Long. Here. Ms. McDowell. Here. Ms. Patton. Here. Mr. Paeo.
Here.
Mr. Reese.
Here.
Mr. Hamilton.
Here. All right. I already gave our executive summary, but I would like to mention our recreation department. Yesterday had an opening of the new playground area at Glen Park. It looks very nice. And also thanks to the Glen Manor House Authority for holding a nice open house yesterday down at the Manor House, complete with Santa Claus. And thankfully, all the cookies were gone before I got there. We have the consent agenda. Mr. President, yes.
Working? Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I would just like to point out to bring the attention of Portsmouth citizens that item 3 is a CRMC public notice. Should a citizen have quote unquote a good reason to enter protest against the proposed work of South Coast.
Is there a second to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we'll be sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. This will be a public hearing for a BV license for Graphic Coffee Company LLC doing business as Graphic Coffee at 205 East Main Road.
Mr. President, I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So this is a public hearing. If anybody would like to get up and speak in favor or against. Nobody is running to the podium. Last chance for Graphic Coffee to have a Class BV license on East Main Road at a location that had a Class BV license before. I have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I have a motion to approve the liquor license for Graphic Coffee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Piero, seconded by Vice President Gleason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I have a motion to adjourn as the Board of License Commissioners, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have minutes from the 11-12 meeting and the 11-25 meeting.
Mr. President, motion to approve the minutes of 11-12-24 and 11-25-24.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? No, you can, you,
For the first one?
no, you can approve them.
Oh.
It's okay. So, motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have our town administrators report. Mr. Rayner.
Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. In early November, Officer Ryan Cheka and Officer Mark Rakshu were awarded DUI achievement pins from the Mothers Against Drunk Driving organization at their annual ceremony. The DUI achievement pins are awarded to police officers across the state for, quote, exceptional DUI experiences on our roadways and a positive impact on our communities. Later in November, the entire Portsmouth Police Department was recognized by AAA Northeast with its Gold Award in recognition of the department's outstanding achievements and efforts regarding traffic safety. The Portsmouth Police Department was the only municipal law enforcement agency in the state to be recognized with the gold standard. Additionally, Deputy Chief Michael Morse was recognized at the award ceremony as a Traffic Safety Hero of the Year, and this award was bestowed upon Major Morse for his development of the Portsmouth Pedestrian Production and Protection Initiative. This plan encompasses a three-pronged approach incorporating crosswalk compliance, safe transportation of Portsmouth students, and protecting student drop-offs. With respect to IT, in early November, we initiated an investigation into reports of internet outages occurring several times per day throughout the town's IT network. This impacted Town Hall, the police, fire, and public works departments. The investigation revealed the need to upgrade the town's firewall and cybersecurity equipment and software. These measures are ongoing and will be completed this month. With respect to the fiscal year 24 audit, the auditor is in the final stages of preparing their financial statements. We are waiting for final reports from the town's actuary firm and expect those early this week.
We're gonna ask you a question.
About?
You want it? Do I wait to the end?
Sure, let's wait to the end.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yes.
The town and school finance departments are working to ensure the audit is completed by the end of the month. Just a reminder to the council and the school committee that the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns and the Rhode Island Interlocal Risk Management Trust, our insurance company, will host an orientation for newly elected officials. The program will be held on Friday. I think it's been moved to January 10th, but check your emails. And you can register via the trust training and events webpage, but I've also sent you the link earlier today. With respect to Public Works, 3 DPW employees graduated in November from the Rhode Island Public Works Association Public Works Academy. So congratulations to Ryan Sylvia, Craig Fernandez, and Kenneth Cabral. Well done. The paving on Riverside Street has been rescheduled to April 2025 due to the recent CRMC approval for the installation of a bioretention basin, which will be installed this month. The pond will aid in stormwater drainage in the area of the paving project. With respect to the Enbridge gas pipeline, the installation of the new pipeline is complete and crews are breaking down equipment and conducting cleanup. Starting in January, Rhode Island Energy will be performing vegetation trimming, mowing, and removal under electric transmission right-of-way on Aquidneck Island. Before the work starts, their forestry team will be surveying, walking and driving the right-of-way and identifying exactly what work needs to be done. That team is also working on a communication plan for abutters along the right-of-way. The survey and communication will be conducted this month. With respect to Old Mill Lane and the LNG injection site that is located there, Rhode Island Energy worked throughout last week to make the Old Mill Lane injection site ready for the upcoming winter operations. The equipment will remain on site until early next spring. Gareth Eames, our building official, is no longer serving as the building official for the town of Portsmouth. We appreciate his service during his time with us, and we are working to ensure a smooth transition for the department. In the interim, the Tiverton building official, Mr. John Hoyle, will be assisting as we work to identify a new building official for Portsmouth. With respect to town hall hours, town hall will close at 12:30 a.m. on December 24th and remain closed on December 25th in observance.
PM.
Did I
PM.
say a.m.? Yeah.
PM.
Yeah. Wishful thinking.
Give them a whole day off.
Yeah. PM. On December 24th and remain closed on the 25th in observance of Christmas. Town hall will also be closed Wednesday, January 1st in observance of New Year's Day. Additionally, the staff offers a sincere thank you to the Portsmouth Garden Club for the wreaths provided at Town Hall and around Portsmouth for the holiday season. We think the wreaths serve as a cheerful reminder of what a special place Portsmouth is to call home. And sadly, Richard Rabs Medeiros, a retired Portsmouth police officer, passed away in November at the age of 87. Rabs served with distinction as a police officer for years in the Portsmouth Police Department, and we offer our deepest sympathy to his family and friends during this time of sorrow. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Any questions from the council? Mr. Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Old Passing 3241 East Main Road. Currently, I looked at the current agenda and noticed that it seems that the town has gone to the chart of accounts. Is the audit and when did we transition to the chart of accounts? And then second of all, will the audit be a chart of accounts?
I can ask our finance director who's behind you, come up and say it.
What's the face this way?
Yeah, but she's behind you.
I don't know all the players.
So as of right now, I'm not sure what you mean by the chart of accounts, but our entire fiscal year is under the audit. We're working tires.
So let me help you with chart of accounts. I noticed they're in the current budget and the bills paid.
Mr. Kesson, can you speak?
There are numbers assigned to every single account, which wasn't that way in the past. It looks like you almost look like a school budget now.
Last 3 years, you're using the same system.
Okay.
Nothing has changed.
I went back to March and didn't see numbers assigned to every account the way it is in the budget report today.
Should be there.
There,
Go back and look. Could be wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kessler. All right, next up, we have resignations and appointments. We have a slew of resignations from those who are currently been elected.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of the following committee members. The Agricultural Committee, myself, David Reese, Conservation Commission, David Reese, Housing Authority, Charlene Patton, Parks and Recreation Committee, Charlene Patton, and School Committee, Sandra Black.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. That means there are currently 5 openings. If you folks, anybody here or at home would love to join one of these committees, they would definitely can use the help. Next, we have an appointment for Peter, I'm going to mess up your last name. I know I am. Lenkarge.
Mr. President, motion to approve the appointment of Mr. Peter Lenkarge to the Conservation Committee.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have our old business number 1, which is our monthly finance report. First night back and you're getting all kinds of exercise in.
Good evening, Mr. President, Honorable Council. As of the end of October, the town was 4 months or 1/4 through the fiscal year of 2025. Year-to-date general fund General fund revenues were at 33.4% of the total budget. Primary sources were tax receipts, town clerk receipts, and investment income. Year-to-date general fund expenditures were at 33% of the total budget. Primary drivers there were bond payments, civic support, stipends, and road paving. At this time, October revenues and expenses do continue to trend positively towards the budgeted amounts.
Any questions on the finance report? I have a motion to receive and place on file, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next up, we're going to do some housekeeping and new business one. We're going to talk about town council decorum and also our rules.
Are you going to discuss each one individually? Because I have some.
Yes,
I have D I'd like to discuss.
yes, we're going to discuss as much as you want, Councilor Reese. So first up, we have always used Robert's Rules of Order, but we reaffirm it each new council. Mr. Gleason, you
Yes.
want to start?
Of course. So nothing really has changed. It's just, kind of a review of where we've been, to establish the rules of decorum here. So we would continue to use Robert's Rules of Order. You want to go through these and vote on a lot? Or just want
We can do one by one vote
Okay.
if you wanted to make an motion to use Robert's Rules of
to
Order.
make a motion to continue to use Robert's Rules of Order?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
There would be an expectation that council members will get permission to speak to the council, one person speaking at a time, simply raising one hand and being recognized. And I make that a motion.
Second.
Just as a discussion point tonight, throw something at me because I can't see everybody because of the way we're set up, all right? Or poke on the way down. But all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Next one would be a motion allowing and encouraging Portsmouth residents and the general public to speak to and opine on the topics of discussion.
Second by Ms. Patton. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Next one is would be a motion to allow councilors a choice of getting parts of the agendas printed out by the town clerk's office after issuance of the agenda. I bring this up because previous councils have pretty much gone paperless. There have been some exceptions to the rule with myself in the past asking for specific topics to be printed out. And I would like to offer that opportunity to do the same for all councilors.
Mr. President, I have discussion on that.
Mr. Councilor Reese.
I make a motion to instruct the clerk at the request of an individual councilor up to the entire package backup can be printed out and provided.
Is there a second?
I second.
And discussion?
That would be an amendment.
That would be an amendment to the main motion, but my feeling on this is that the entire packet, meaning this week's, was 377 pages long. And to print out 377 pages takes an awful lot of time. I would request that counselors use their best judgment and only print out what they need. I don't think we need and I'm guessing here, but I think it was 83-page resume from one of the individuals. I don't think we need that printed, but if you can work with the clerk and only print out what you truly
That
need.
is the plan.
Okay.
I would concur.
All right, first up, we'll have a motion. Well, we can have a vote on the motion as amended with the ability to print the entire agenda if needed.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. I don't think we should print the whole agenda, but. And now we're on to E, RFQ for solicitors services.
Mr. President, this is just,
Took a vote on the amendment
We took a vote on as the
We need
motion
a
as
motion.
amended.
as amended.
As amended,
Not
Yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
perfectly fine.
so, this is, a motion to have a request for quotes for solicitor service for the town council and for the service of the town of Portsmouth. This, I brought up, I don't believe we've been out for bids since 2017. Our current solicitor may in fact remain our current solicitor, but I asked the town to put together an RFQ. And in such a fashion that people would be able to bid on services as rendered now, as opposed to just an hourly rate. So that would be my motion. In other words, essentially, our solicitor is required to come to two town council meetings a month, a zoning board meeting, a planning board meeting, and the associated paperwork with that should be considered as part of the function to be bid on.
So are you asking just to use the same RFQ that we used in 2017?
I don't know what was on that RFQ, to be honest with you. I don't recall.
Do you want to review the RFQ and then send it out on the 13th? Or do you want to just trust that the staff will
That's
send out?
fine.
That's it. I'm just asking. We can send it out, have
No,
the staff do it, or we can,
Let's just assign a date that the council would review it and we try and get it out on the 13th.
Okay.
January.
What is the motion?
the motion would be to task the administration to put together an RFQ, send it to the council, and then we would vote to release it on the 13th of January.
So moved.
Second.
So motion is from Mr. Reese, Councilor Reese, and seconded by Councilor
Actually, would be
McDowell.
my motion.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Gleason made the motion already, so.
And so, yeah.
So, Mr. Reese, you seconded the motion.
I second.
All right, we'll work out these bugs.
Just re-clarify what the motion is, just
The-
Richard is really throwing it
Yeah,
off.
no worries. The motion is to ask the staff to craft an RFQ, get it to the council for review, and a vote to send it out to the public on January 13th. Well, actually, obviously it'd be the 14th, but after, we would vote on sending out the RFQ on the 13th of January.
So, Mr. President, I have a question. Do we currently have a contract with our current solicitor? And when does that contract currently expire?
We do not have a contract. It's the solicitor of town serves at the will of the council.
Correct. We do have a contract, but there is no expiration.
There is no date on it.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
Motion passes 6-1. Counselor Piero and,
No.
nope, 6-2, sorry.
5-2.
You gotta yell.
Nay.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-2. Counselors Blank and Piero in the negative. And item F is any other suggestions from counselors? Counselor Blank.
One suggestion, is going forward, I know in the past we had, town council has voted in series. If we could vote collectively, I think that would be more beneficial, to the residents. And not be able to have the last person be able to get what they want and vote a different way. Or
In terms of what? Typically, we just vote as a collective. Do you want a roll call vote for each one?
in the past, it had been a roll call. Can we keep it as collective?
We've only done roll call votes on specific items. I don't even remember what they were.
It was
Right.
COVID.
COVID, because we were online. When we're in open session and we do a collective vote. Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, we will move on to new business number 2. Which is a public hearing for a community block grant application for the Church Community Housing Corp. To review and approve programs to be included in the town's CBG application to provide funding to replacement or upgrade of heating systems at Quaker Manor number 4, owned by Sabatis Quaker LLC, a 40 elderly unit housing unit located at 2368 East Main Road for the amount of $500,000.
So moved.
There we go. We do the opposite of the school committee. We actually don't open discussion with a vote. We just assume it's open, yeah.
Make a motion without a vote.
Well, we're not making a motion until the end. We're just having discussion first. We do it opposite of the school committee. Ms. Hitchin, good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Keith Hamilton, President Day, and Honorable Town Council members. I am here before you as the second public hearing to ask for your approval in the one CDBG application. Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
The application that we received for the $500,000 application from Sabatis Housing to replace heating units for Quaker Manor and Quaker Estates. You have received in your packets the draft application. To do so, the application is due on December 31st, so you have a draft application in front of you. You have received the backup for the legal advertisements. We had the first public hearing at 6 o'clock on November 20th. There were several people that did show up, and I thought it was very useful with my CDBG project manager, Mr. Plain from Church Community Housing, who helped explain the process and why the town needs to be involved in the whole process. Mr. Plain does represent multiple communities in CDBG, and he did, I thought, a very thorough analysis and explaining the project back on November 20th. Usually, in prior years, we have multiple applications, and your theme here is to prioritize. Since there's only one, we're asking for your one blessing on this to move this forward. So that's what I'm doing here tonight, is asking for you to bless it and move it for approval. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Councilors have any questions for our planner? Councilor Blank, and if we could all speak into the microphone so the folks at home can hear us better. I'm assuming all of you can hear us okay? So we just speak into the microphone closer so that everybody at home can hear us as well. Thank you.
Yeah. What is the project duration that this would happen in? As soon as the Sabatis is granted the money, they would implement this immediately, so within the next year. So it wouldn't be happening now in the future time, right? Is that correct? Sabatis would be getting the money within the springtime is usually when this money would be released from HUD. Have they said the duration of how long it would take for these units to be updated? I believe Mr. Packard is here. He would be able to better answer that question.
It's behind it. Yeah. If you could just say your name
Michael Packard.
and if you could speak into the mic too. You're slightly taller than Liam.
Sorry. Yes, so name is Michael Packard with Sabatis Housing. And answer to your question, it's hard to say exactly simply because we don't know the availability of equipment, but I would put it in about 3 months. So assuming the money flows in the late spring from HUD, that as soon as the heating season is over, we would immediately commence replacement of equipment.
So am I hearing you correct that approximately, if it does start in the spring, it would be 3 months?
Yes.
Have we done any asbestos testing to make sure we don't have to do any abatement of that?
Yes,
Am I correct in the assumption that there is no asbestos?
that's correct.
And then can I help me understand the grant payoff plan? What with that duration? Welcome to the night.
It's great to be here. So my name is Bob Lane and I'm the town CDBG. I work for Church Community Housing and we're the town CDBG consultant. And your question was, can you Just,
Would we need to be paying off the grant and what would be that requirement around that?
so the municipality doesn't pay off the grant. How CDBG works is it's a reimbursement program. So, like sometimes we like colloquially, I'll say things like the money flows from HUD, but what actually happens is, so Sabatis will have to pay the contractor that they hire, and then the state will reimburse Sabatis.
Are there any terms or conditions that we have to meet?
So many of them. I think Leah put a draft contract in your packet.
Do you have any concerns of meeting those or getting the data?
It's not the town that has to meet those, it's the subrecipient. So what happens is the town will sign the state will ask the town to sign a contract. And then we'll ask Sabatis to sign a contract that moves all those kind of rights and liabilities from the town to Sabatis. So all 100% of the liability is with the subrecipient, 0% of the liability is with the town.
I just want to ensure that we're getting the heating system done and we're not on the hook for any concerns that might come up.
There's no possible way the town could be on the hook for anything with the community development block grant.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you as well.
Any further questions from the council? Councilor McGowan.
Just,
Sorry. So we'll share.
thanks. Just, I want to be very clear upfront that I in no way am opposed to the Quaker Manor, Quaker Estates, which is owned by Sabatis Housing, to be able to upgrade an ineffective and outdated heating system. I want to note, however, that this heating problem has existed for several years without a proper remedy. It existed, as far as I can tell through my research, and again, I could be wrong, so please, I'm green at this. I've done a lot of research, so if any statement that I make is incorrect, please give me the light here. So it existed as far back as I can tell under the oversight of the Portsmouth Housing Authority as far back as 2017. At that time, HUD issued, it appears, a $1.2 million mortgage to make these necessary capital improvements. In order to qualify for this mortgage, I think I read or researched that the town transferred ownership of this property to Quaker Manor LLC for $0 and a substantial tax abatement. From 2017 to 2020, the Portsmouth Housing Authority, it appears, failed to render proper oversight of the HUD mortgage issued to Quaker Manor LLC. And from all accounts, the PHA, Portsmouth Housing Authority, had dissolved itself during those years. And as a result, found itself in a substantial legal and financial predicament with HUD. It is because of past history that I take pause with any involvement with the town to oversee, manage, or give any assurances required in connection to a grant program. Now, I know it has just been stated that the town, and I've read editorials by people who were intimately involved with the writing of the grant, that the town does not have any kind of requirements. But I think in order to be fair, we have to look at a contract that is associated with a HUD grant. And as of September 13th, 2024, complete ownership of the properties formerly owned by Portsmouth was conveyed to Quaker Manor Estates Property, a nonprofit organization known throughout the nation as developing, supporting, and providing housing for low to moderate income persons. With this conveyance of properties to a nonprofit, these are the questions that I ask myself. What is the role and responsibilities of the town of Portsmouth regarding this grant? And if I refer back to those people intimately involved with this process. In an editorial, it says this application for a federal public facilities grant involves no investment from the town. I'm assuming they mean investment monetarily, but it is an investment in the town. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It will cost, and another quote, it will cost Portsmouth taxpayers nothing, which monetarily is true. Another letter, a vote in support of submitting the proposal does not commit the town to anything. No local oversight processes are required. The town simply has to meet the standard terms and conditions for proper use of funds for the proposed project. And that's taken from letters to the editor, again, with people directly involved. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a grant that is very needed by our constituencies. However, it is a grant that is going to be acquired by a nonprofit organization, which we have given much to, I think, over the years. There is town oversight of this. Let there be no mistake about that. I guess I need to know who will be the oversight people for this grant, and what will it involve? According to the contract that I saw for community housing that we have in our packet too, Mr. Rayner has to sign on behalf of the town, as well as in that particular contract, church community, Christian. What oversight does the town do in terms of this grant?
So as far as oversight, I guess I draw that short straw, and that's my job.
As a town employee?
Well, so we're much like your town solicitor, we're a contractor for the town. So the way it works is there's actually sometimes some administrative funds that come with CDBG awards, and we get paid through those administrative funds that come with the award. So it's extremely infrequently that we ever get paid by a municipality, but it's my job to make sure, and I'll work very closely with Michael to make sure that they, just do all the paperwork the way the state and federal government require.
So I'm going to play a devil's advocate.
I'll play right
okay? So what happens if you don't do your job? Then what happens in terms of the liability of the town? Not that I'm saying you're not going to do your job.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Wait a minute, that you didn't do your job?
It happens, yeah. And the good news is there's people at the state to make sure that I do it correctly. So there's just oversight after. So one of the, and actually it's worth mentioning, so like CDBG, does everyone know kind of the origin story of CDBG? Does anyone want to know? So it started, Senator George Romney, right? So he thought it was an improvement on Lyndon Johnson's Great Society effort. And he said, you know what, the feds are making all these decisions for people at the local level. What if we add some local oversight in? So that's actually what CDBG does, is it adds me and Leah in the state of Rhode Island as oversight into what before that Lyndon Johnson thought was decisions they should be making in Washington, DC. So, it was Republicans in Congress actually who added all these layers of oversight to make sure that when this happens, that, we can make sure that the taxpayers are protected.
Okay, so I'm assuming Leah is your partner for this oversight.
6 my ears.
Okay, that's good.
Maybe not to Leah's.
I'm not sure she wants to comment. Okay, all right, that's nice clarification, thank you. Just a couple other confusing messages that in my research that I found is there's a lot of reference to Portsmouth Housing Authority like owning this property, and that in fact is not true. Even the public notice for the public hearing refers to Quaker Manor 4 as being owned by the Portsmouth Housing Authority. And I don't think that's accurate information, because as of September 13th, the record of ownership was recorded by Sabatus.
Yeah.
So that public hearing notice was incorrect, correct?
If that's the case, then you might be right. I'm not
Okay.
sure that would mean that the state would not award a CDBG award
Right.
in this case, but.
No, but that's one example of, you know, the people, the citizens believing that these properties are owned by the town, and they are not, okay? And then in the agenda for the Portsmouth Housing Authority on October 30th, 2024, under the section B, the chairman's report, it said, as we remain owner of record for Quaker Manor, again, the conveyance happened on 9/13. So does that mean that the chair of the Portsmouth Housing Authority didn't know that the conveyance took place? Okay, all right. And,
Chair is here if you'd like to have his answer.
what's that?
The chair is here if you'd like to have his answer.
Oh, did you say yet you wanted to speak?
No, no. I said the chair is
Oh,
here.
it's
if you would like
here.
to have
Oh,
his
okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
My name is Jim Seven,
Hi,
72 Macron Lane, chairman of the Portsmouth Housing Authority. The conveyance took place actually on September 12th. We heard about it a few days later, and at the next meeting, we were the owner of record. And once we acknowledged and approved its decision to allow the transfer of pieces of assets, which we've been waiting for well over a year. I mean, much of this stuff took place. The settlement agreement with HUD for all the trouble that the housing authority had gotten into, as you referenced back in 2017. The short history on this, in 2017, the existing housing authority applied for a program that would allow them to obtain a commercial loan that in retrospect they couldn't for the debt service. That led to all sorts of problems. As you pointed out, during that time frame, the existing commission, board of commission at the time left. Some of them actually resigned from the city district. Time I was a senator for this district, and I started getting phone calls from the residents. Almost all of them. This was in early 2020. By the time we figured out things were going right.
Right.
And at that point, you know, we appointed a new planning commission to start trying to fix things. The biggest issue there, of course, was that no one had done any financial audits that were required. So that took us a couple of years to get that fixed, which we did. Part of the term of the settlement agreement was to transfer the ownership of the property to a nonprofit that is actually in the business and managed. Now, the property had been managed all along through nonprofits as management agents. The problem was the nonprofit that both managed Quaker Manor and also owned Quaker Estates. I mean, from the outset, the Quaker Estates portion of the property was never owned by the Quaker Housing Authority. It was always owned by Quaker Housing Corporation. They were the ones who built it back in the late 70s, early 80s. So it's a mixed bag of property ownership. It took us a while to figure out all that too. When we first came on the board, we actually owned Quaker Manor. But in fact, we did. The property was the case I built 2 months ago. At that point, you know, we had to apply with HUD, and it went through a year of scrutiny with lawyers and whatnot to make sure that the ownership transfer was proper. The financial aspects of that transfer was, Sabatis Housing agreed to purchase the property for the cost of the existing indebtedness, with $1.2 million in that original HUD loan, plus another $300,000 from Brown House. So about $1.4 million in indebtedness. We transferred the property, they took on all the debt, they now do own the property. Now, all that said, if you look in Title 45, any housing authority has a long list of powers and authorities, none of which the Western Housing Authority has given away or had taken away from this transfer. We still have oversight authority, certainly advocacy for residents. If we had the wherewithal, which clearly we don't, the Western Housing Authority doesn't even have a check. But we can make loans, we can sell property, we can pursue grants in our own right, regardless of ownership. So the housing authority is still very, very much on the scene, will continue to be, we'll be providing oversight with management agent. And that will continue as it has in both Quaker Manor and Quaker State Property. So somewhere in there, I might have answered some of your questions, but ask
Yeah,
again. The ones I missed, please ask me again.
No, it's good clarity for me. It's just, having heard what I said and then having heard what you said, that's the reason I'm asking the questions. I know back in 2017, it was an actual loan, which is different from a CDBG, but oversight then slipped by, for whatever reason, it did slip. And we got into a situation where we had to give up a property. I'm sure it was maybe a headache, but you gave up a property because of lack of oversight, is all I'm saying. And that's what brings me to this. Even though CDBG is not the same, it does call for in the contract oversight by the town. And that's where I just get nervous. And and I guess Portsmouth Housing, you say they still have duties and whatever, but what is the purpose of existence if the town does not own any properties now for the Portsmouth Housing Authority? That would be my other question. And I think what is your purpose for existence?
Fair enough, fair question.
Yeah,
If you look in Title 45,
Yeah.
Chapter 25, City and Town section of Rhode Island State law, there's a long list of things that Western Housing Authority, any housing authority in the state has been chartered. Ours was chartered back in 1963 or 64. They're empowered to inspect, ensure that work is being done properly. We're empowered to help with the issues subpoenas if we wish to have people come and testify if something goes awry.
so will you continue to have that duty of inspecting the properties, even though they're not our properties?
Right.
You will still under
It's been the case that way for 30 years. We've never owned Quaker
Yeah.
Estates. However, all of those duties and responsibilities still fall to the housing. Now, I can't really, I'm trying to make a case for a housing authority that clearly failed. Not so much the town, because record just, so everybody understands, the Portsmouth Housing Authority is only related to the town in that the town appoints the commissioners and can fire the commissioners. Oh, we also owe you the legal report, which probably could they've done some of your questions. So it's a separate state chartered entity. Okay, we come with our own, like I said, powers and duties that are all in state law. Quaker Estates. We have administered and overseen the operations and activities at Quaker Estates since inception. Back in the since late seventies, early eighties when they were built, even though they were built and owned privately by the original property manager up there. Quaker, coastal properties. So, none of those duties and responsibilities go away. They are not eroded by the transaction. And frankly, it's in the best interest, not so much the town, but the residents, the people who live there. It's in their best interest that we have a competent, well-known agent, owner now that's going to run that place. So. As far
And I agree with you there,
yeah,
for sure.
and you know, in most cases, CDBG grants eventually get to a sub-recipient that is a nonprofit. Okay?
Right.
The town of Portsmouth isn't competent to there anymore than the Portsmouth Housing Authority really is from a day-to-day operations standpoint. We're actually reviewing the state of building infrastructure, deciding how to fix it, how to pay for it, how to make sure that it's done properly. Well, Sabatis Housing and the property agent on the property right now, Phoenix Property Management. They know how to do this. And you can go back to Pakistan, I mean, people tell you. So it's in the best interest of the property, of the residents, so therefore, by extension to the town, that this has happened. Now, back to the reason we're here, grants themselves. Partly a weekend has gone by over the past winters. Where we didn't get a phone call, either someone on board. Charlie,
Yeah.
he's got those calls. I don't know how to get from your mother, actually. But this problem has to be fixed. It has to be fixed as quickly as we possibly can. The issue that faces us more than any other issue is
Could you just speak into the mic? That's all right.
the issue that really faces us more than anything else is that there isn't any money left. The way all this stuff works is people pay their subsidized rent. And there's also a subsidized payment that comes through federal funds from flood. And the property agent, the property manager has to take those funds. That's the only source of income for these properties. Okay, there's 73 units up there and there's 73 residents. They all pay their rent, they all get a subsidy. And that money is full to use to operate the property, take care of the residents, make sure that the streets.
I'll turn my back again. I'm turning my back, so I'm good.
Including, you know, stay warm and dry. Beyond that income stream, there is no loan. The loan that was originally taken out, they have assumed it now, but the finances are very tight in terms of figuring out how to pay the debt service, how to keep the place staffed properly so the residents have the service and the responsiveness that they need. All this is right now very tight, and it's going to be tight for a while until Sabatis Housing goes through their own business process, lining up low-income housing tax credit programs. That's where a lot of the money will come from in the future. Big companies will purchase these tax credits from Sabatis, which they'll turn around and then have to invest in the property. That takes a long time.
Right.
In the meantime, we need money as quickly as we can. And even this, I mean, this is what we're talking about tonight. It's not a solution for this winter. Okay, so people are going to be cold there this winter. The heating systems will continue to fail until we can get a proper fix. So we need this money to at least accelerate the process as best we can, so that we're not having this discussion next time. So that's.
Well, that leads me to one of my last questions. Last year, this grant was applied for the same purpose and we didn't get it. What happens if we don't get it this year? What happens? Do we just continue to wait, or does Sabatis take care of the problem?
I'll let Savis answer that. I mean, they haven't taken care of the problem as best as they can, given putting the investment in there to replace all the heating systems, which is really the right answer.
Well, that's the only answer, really, for these people, if we
Yes,
consider the occupants, it's the only answer to make it right. But if we don't get this grant, is there a plan from Sabatis to take care of this heating issue?
Well, let's back it up a step,
All right.
okay? Step one. Will you allow us to apply for it?
Oh, yeah, see, I said up front,
Good, good.
these are questions that I need answered.
Yeah.
This is a desperately needed thing, but I've got to have some answers and some assurances in terms of the town's liability and in terms of the town's investment, time-wise and everything else.
Are you satisfied on the liability question?
No, but
Well,
it's,
ask another question. What, I mean, the town's liability.
if you look at the contract,
I did,
For-
I read the contract.
okay, and you're saying in that contract, there is no liability
No.
if,
If something goes awry, town can refuse.
they can get out and they can
No,
stop the contract.
they can refuse to honor the invoice that Sabatis submits.
Yeah, but let's say it's already halfway through the contract, halfway through the grant. You have of the 500,000, they've already spent 250,000. Anyways, it's not cut and dry like that, the way I read it anyways.
Well, it really kind of is kind of right. Because what happens is you have work that's done. An invoice is submitted, third party that's problems to claim will review the invoice against the work. And he would probably go to the town planner. And he also answers to Brown Housing to say, yes, this invoice should be honored. The work that this invoice represents has been accomplished. So you pay that invoice. And it's on to the next one and the next one. Okay, now, if at some point in the future, things go awry, and either the town, or the claim, or the planner, or the state says, well, wait a minute. I don't think we should honor this invoice. Well, okay, now there's a problem to be resolved. But everything that's gone before that, that's already been approved. So, like I said, I think it was the same thing with the loan that the housing authority took back in 2017. It's not like you get money. You get the opportunity to submit your invoices to the bank that's holding them. To have that bank pay those.
But we incurred a 1.2 or 1.3 million dollar. It fell on our lap.
Not we, me. The Budget Housing Authority. It's not the town. You had no obligation.
Okay,
I mean, that's.
Yeah, okay.
That's a fact. You have no obligation there. The Budget Housing Authority, in
I
fact,
don't want to take up the time,
doesn't,
but all my things not answered.
isn't a part of it.
All I would ask is that in the future, that we not give the citizens either the impression that we own the property, because we don't, and it was in a flyer that you sent out, it was in October 30th, I just don't think it's right to give the citizens the impression that Portsmouth owns that property, and I think you should really think about that the next time. Also, one last thing is, this grant, which was it born at the Portsmouth Housing Authority to continue with it? And born, that's the wrong word, but.
Well, it was a continuation from last year.
Right, okay. So I looked at the minutes of the Portsmouth Housing, and I didn't see anywhere there where the Portsmouth Housing Authority group approved to send the grant forward. Is that, did I miss something?
Yeah,
I did.
because it wasn't the housing authority's granting forward at that point. As you pointed out, property ownership transfer, it became Sabattis's responsibility to move the grant forward, which they can do without the Portsmouth Housing Authority's approval. So that's why it wasn't on the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Seventy. Mr. Hale.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of questions for you, Senator, or Mr. Flynn, who I assume is behind you. Thank you. Hi. More yes or no questions. Are the town currently involved in any I'd say this a lot of times, CDBG programs?
I screw it up all the time too. Yes, there's currently an active one for the Ade Bethune Export from the Portsmouth Seniors.
Okay, and secondly, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 13 years, have we, Portsmouth and surrounding communities applied for roughly $750,000 in grant funding?
That sounds pretty close.
Okay, and how many of those have you filled?
Zero.
Thank you so much.
In fact, in our history of managing CDBG awards for all of Newport County, I don't think we've ever had a problem. You know, within our offices, I know some of you on the council are familiar with, you know, my kind of CDBG spirit animal, Steve Ostagai. You know, and he's been managing the program since its inception. And in our office, we have something like over 60 years of CDBG experience. And like managing it for the communities that we work for is one of the things we do. But every day we get calls from all over the state and all over New England, actually, just because people know how good we are at managing CDBG and administering the program. So not to toot our own horns, but we're really good at what we do.
Mr. Reese. Did you have questions? I'm sorry. No, okay. Ms. Patton? Fine, nope. Mr. Gleason? Okay. This is a public hearing, so if anybody wants to come up and request anything or say anything, please come to the microphone and please state your name and address for the record for the clerk. Ms. Green?
Tom Green, 110 Zero Drive. I want to remind folks here, this is a public hearing, and your job tonight is to listen to the public thoughts on this grant. I'd like to begin by saying that I believe this hearing should be rescheduled and re-advertised. The advertising for tonight's hearing says that Quaker Manor and Quaker Estates are owned by Portsmouth Housing Authority. That is not true. Nor was it true at the time of the advertisement was placed. Quaker Manor and Quaker Estates are owned by Sabattis Housing, which is a private company, not a Portsmouth-run town organization like Portsmouth Housing Authority. This misinformation would definitely influence whether our residents believe Portsmouth should be applying for this grant to fix Quaker heating problem, even whether they would come tonight. I believe the misinformation has misled the reader to an extent that requires postponing this hearing until a proper advertisement with correct information published.
I have another idea on how we can handle that situation.
Sure, Mr. Blaine. So, but just for the record, postponing this, and since we don't meet again until January, would mean we'd be putting this off until next year.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're just putting it off anyway. We already know we're not going into this winter.
No, we're pushing it off until the winter of 20.
Only if you have to go for this grant. This is the only way to
Okay,
provide housing.
Mr. Blaine, go ahead.
So, Council President, that's actually what I was gonna say. The grant deadline is the end of the year, and we have to re-advertise the meeting. So to postpone it would be to effectively not apply for this much needed money. So another thing we could do is we could apply, you could, if you see fit, you could pass the resolution and then we could apply. And we could even tell the state of Rhode Island what Tom's brought to our attention. And then if they think that's reason to deny our application, then Tom, you've done us a great service. And then if they think that we can still proceed with, you know, the information Tom's brought to us, then I think everyone wins. Tom, you brought some important information to us. The Sabatis has still been able to apply, and some Portsmouth residents may be safer, warmer, and drier than they otherwise would.
Mr. President.
Assuming that you're not going to change and re-advertise this, I want to make sure that you understand the residents, Quaker Manor and Quaker Estates deserve a warm, safe environment. I do not think anyone can dispute that. The question, who is responsible to provide it? Around 2015, the heat problem was identified, and Portsmouth attempted to fix this with financial help from HUD. I will not go into the long story, but suffice it to say, the deal with HUD ended up beyond Portsmouth's oversight capabilities, and it did not work out well. Church Community Housing, Phoenix, and Sabatis were brought in by the reconstituted Portsmouth Housing Authority to solve the management problems and to satisfy HUD in 2021. Sabatis has now been involved for at least 3 years managing this property and driving a solution to where Sabatis is now the owner of the property. The heat problems are not new news to anyone. Sabatis should have developed a plan to provide safe, warm accommodations on day one. Why are we discussing this grant now? There is virtually no time, the proper research, or to develop a true understanding of the implications. By the way, at $500,000 for 73 units, assuming they were all replaced, that's about $7,000 per unit, which seems rather high for a one-bedroom apartment heating system to me. Furthermore, what is Sabatis' plan if we don't get the grant approved? The $2.6 million Quaker property and buildings have been transferred to Sabatis. We're assuming the $1.2 million HUD loan. Church Community Housing has received 5 acres of Ann Hutchinson property, easily over $1 million gift. Portsmouth further gave Sabatis a major break on Quaker property taxes and $30,000 in cash for creating 3 HUD required financial reports. So these organizations have been well compensated by Portsmouth, fixing the problem. Sabatis owns the property and is now responsible. If they want to fix the problem with the grant, they should be the ones applying. A grant that requires Portsmouth to be the applicant cannot be the only option available for providing heat to these housing units. If it is, I would like to see that analysis and justification from Sabatis. The last time Portsmouth helped another entity obtain HUD funding for this property heating, things went horribly wrong. Sabatis is a large, multi-state organization. They have been well compensated for their help. Sabatis did the work to become the owners and manage the property for 3 years in the interim. Sabatis is now the ones who need to step up and properly manage and maintain the units. Portsmouth, on the other hand, has proved they should not be in the middle of the process like this. That's
Thank you, Mr. Green. Madam Planner, may I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
The only way to facilitate a CDG block grant is through a town entity or a city entity, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Vice President Gleason.
Okay, President, the only thing I would ask is in the legal notice, whether the solicitor has any issues with that. You know, been involved in this at all. It's just how it reads. It's just saying the property is owned by the housing.
That's what everyone said. But I think Mr. Plain offered a way to correct that without basically abandoning the grant.
So you're just saying that there may be an issue and just go around it by the resolution.
Given the options,
Thank you.
I did not hear one.
the question was, the solicitor was concerned about the advertisement and whether or not it would affect the application process as deceptive advertising.
Not so much the application process, just whether there are any legal ramifications that come back to haunt us, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Peter Roberts, 80 Conrad Avenue. Just one other thing that has not been mentioned here. They have also lost their air conditioning. And in the summertime, that's the same thing as losing your heat. Why hasn't that been brought up?
Mr. Plain, are these units, mini split type units where they do heat pumps and air conditioning?
So again, this is Michael Packard. The simple answer to that question is somewhat. So there's 5 different properties over there. Each one is built in a different manner. Quaker Manor is different than Quaker Estates 1 and 2, which is different. 3 and 4. So yes, some have air conditioning, some do not. Main issue that I think being referred to is we had an issue with the community room air conditioning, Quaker Estates 4, which we worked as aggressively good to get it fixed, but we were at the mercy of independent contractors and parts availability. So
Has it been fixed now for next year?
yes,
Thank you.
truthfully, it's hard to tell.
All you gotta do is open the window today.
Yes, that's correct. And I think, I'll address something else that people mentioned. And, what are we doing about the system now? So the simple answer is that we do everything that we can, but we have a huge needs list in a little bit of money paper. So we do the same thing you can do with your car. If your car breaks down, you say, what should you do? Well, the obvious answer, get a new car, right? Who doesn't want a new car? Maybe you can't afford a new car, so what do you do? Fix it, right? You maybe put used parts in it, maybe you bring it to the dealer and get a first class job done. So what we do over there on a daily basis is we rob Peter to pay Paul. We cannibalize systems, and what that means is if on occasion, we have replaced some of these systems, so some of the units have individual, their own compartmentalized unit that only services one apartment. When that system is replaced, instead of throwing it out, like one person would do, we take it back and we scavenge parts off it. But some of the parts are just not available. You can't buy them for any money. You could have $200,000, but you can't buy a $50 part. Just don't make it. So that's what we do. And we stockpile some parts. The problem we have, we don't know what's going to break. And if anybody wants to know when's the last time we had a no heat call, it'll be yesterday. So the question before everybody here today, we can talk about semantics and we can talk about whether the ad get run properly, misspell something or upside down in the newspaper. The question you have important today is, do you want elderly enforcement residents holes or not? That's a simple question. And I can tell you, Jim can give you more information on it. I have done a tremendous amount for these properties. I have spent a lot of my money, not the town's money. I heard at the last meeting, somebody said, oh, well, the town had to support the housing authority. The housing authority has been around longer than I've been around. I think maybe 1966, when that building was open. What's the budget line item town of Portsmouth pays for the housing authority? Does anybody know? $0.0. So at one point, the town of their own free will gave the housing authority $30,000 to get some audits done, to get HUD off the back. So $30,000 since the mid-60s. That to me seems like a pretty good deal. A pretty good deal. That's my personal belief on the situation. You may ask yourself, why have you been here? Why did you come to the rescue of these properties? Simple question I grew up understand. I went to school in the school. And I have a lot of bond members, and I know a lot about the business. There's very few people that know more about this business than I do. And I wasn't gonna sit by and let the housing authority get destroyed while I knew how to solve the problem. So I stepped up to the plate. Now, had I known it was gonna cost me so much money, I probably would not have stepped up to the plate because it's in the six figures. So it's a lot of money. So again, question is asked, what's the solution if we don't get it? We're gonna ask again, we're gonna ask for something else. We're gonna try and do a tax credit transaction, but nothing, and I repeat, nothing with HUD, with this property is simple, nothing. It took about, what, a year and a half to get the approval for the sale. A sale, by the way, HUD asked for it. Not me, I didn't ask for it. HUD said, we want this property transferred. Because, for people that are not in the business, you may say, why would HUD want it transferred? Because simply put, at some point in dealing with HUD, you cross a line, you never come back. And the housing authority crossed that line. So HUD said, we don't care what you do in the future, we don't care who you are, we don't care if the president's on your board, you're out. Because you crossed the line, you can't come back. So they wanted the building sold, they wanted it sold to somebody that had deep pockets to make sure the stuff got fixed. Because they didn't want to hear, we don't have money to pay for it already. So every year the building loses money. That's a fact of life. It's going to continue to lose money all the time until we solve the problem. But that's okay, because at some point the problem will be solved and the building will be good. Right now, it loses money. Right now, we have a problem with the immune system. And I will also point out, most people don't know this, and maybe Jim doesn't want me to say it, I don't know. But I'll tell you this. When Jim called, I probably shouldn't have answered the phone, but I did. And told me what was going on. He sent me the letters from the enforcement center. Just so everybody knows who the enforcement center is. The enforcement center at HUD is like the people that teach the IRS how to be tough. Okay, you cross them, you've got big problems. So the enforcement center's dream, the Quaker Manor, was to foreclose on it, close it down, throw everybody out. That was their vision. That's what we stepped in to solve. So while everybody else is talking about, what other simple things didn't get done or what have you, we were busying ourselves with trying to fight the wolves that were trying to take property away, because that's what would have happened. Simply put. Now, the people at HUD on the ground in Boston, they were also trying to save it. But like I said, the enforcement center was not somebody you want to mess with. So we spent a tremendous amount of money, very high-powered, expensive lawyers to fight the enforcement center. And at the end of the day, we got them to agree to two things. One, transfer the building. Two, paying a hefty fine. And that's what we did because there was no other way. Short of that, it was goodbye, Quaker Manor. That was just a fact of life. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilor Blank, you have a question or comment?
Just a quick question for clarity. I recognize this is the deadline is we need to have this free and are there any negative repercussions of applying for this that we lose out on?
No.
I don't think so. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Council? Any further comments or questions from the audience? One last time, any comments, questions from the audience? No? May I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So our next step would be gonna go to new business number 3 and approve the resolution requesting the grant application to go to the state for the CBGB.
Mr. President, I have a discussion on that.
Correct?
You are asked to with the
The
resolution.
Correct. So we're moving on to new business 3.
Okay, as a part of the discussion, of what we just talked about, I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution to the following.
Hold on a quick second. Go ahead.
Okay, the town administrator is hereby authorized and directed to file this application to the Office of Housing and Community Development and to provide any additional information or documents required by said office. Any assurances required in connection with this program, the execution of the agreement with the state of Rhode Island, and otherwise acting as the representative of the town of Portsmouth in all matters relating to this application. And any award which may be based on this application must be brought back to the council for their approval. This just gives the council oversight.
The application needs to be submitted by the end of the month. And you don't meet again until January 13th.
I think this just has to do with when it's rewarded, when it's awarded.
This is just authorizes you to.
You're asking for the council to be kept apprised of what's going on.
Officially, yes.
Just changes it right here.
Can you repeat the last, your addition, just you don't have to repeat the whole thing, just the addition.
And I do have a copy of this for the clerk. Any assurances required in connection with this program, the execution of the agreement with the state of Rhode Island, and otherwise acting as the representative of the town of Portsmouth in all matters relating to this application. And any award which will be based on this application must be brought back to the council for their approval. We're trying to make sure that there's no addendums in there that's going to be something that's going to.
There's no addendums, it's the contract that you see and what you see in front of you. I think I would feel more comfortable if you A, didn't add on to the run-on sentence, and B, put a request that once awarded, any and all updates are brought forward, because there's not going to be any amendments or changes made to this application.
Okay, we can go with so moved as you wanted to do.
Well, just.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
It's just a request that the council is made updated on when this application is, if it is accepted. And the application and I'm trying to think of the word, but my brain is fried right now. The application of the contract of the funds, correct? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just encourage the council or recommend to the council that if you do want to do that you do it outside of the resolution, which is a standard resolution as part of the CDBG application.
Mr. President, can I just second that in terms of when it comes to federal funds, resolutions that come from municipalities and states need to be done to a specific standard, and deviating from that can actually hinder the state's ability to even apply. We see that with Medicaid waivers, it happens in a bunch of different federal funds.
And Tom might ask us not to pass it once it's not federal.
Just changing that.
I'm not disagreeing with us getting updates on the regular about what's happening with it, but the resolution should just pass.
Mr. Reese, would it, if we had a second, rather than changing the resolution,
Okay.
can we have a motion if the resolution is passed?
Right.
You can make a motion to request updates of the grant, the application, and the application of the funding once they are available from the planner and the administrator. And any other staff that is needed, whether it be Mr. Planner, so if you can make that after there is a up and down vote on the actual resolution itself. Do we have a motion? I would like to entertain a motion to pass the resolution so we can put the application in, so we can try and fix these poor people's heat
So
as soon
moved.
as possible.
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Reese, seconded by Mr. Pereira. Any further discussion from councilors? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's time.
All right, Mr. Reese, now your motion to have updates on the status of the application and the application of the funds as we go forward in the process. Hopefully, we get awarded the funds to be kept up to date by the town planner and the town administrator. Is your motion correct?
Right.
Say so moved for me.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all for that one. Thank you, Mr. Reese, for the clarification. New business number 4. Mr. Gleason, request approval for a public hearing to be held on 1/13/25 to rescind/repeal the ordinance 2024-11-12 in its entirety, which is the solid waste ordinance that was passed by the previous council. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. President. So basically, this really not up for discussion. It's just to ask the council to approve a public hearing on January 13th. As we said, to rescind and repeal the approved ordinance. That would be my motion.
Okay. Is there a second for discussion?
Second.
Motion is from Mr. Gleason and seconded by Mr. Reese. I will state now that if this motion were to pass, new business number 5 would not be heard tonight. Because if the ordinance is repealed, many things would change in both of the cost structures of the transfer station and the curbside. So we would have a discussion of the cost of the transfer station and the curbside after the public hearing on this ordinance repeal, if it were to pass then. So, yes, sir.
Yes, Kevin Rowe, Morningside Lane. I'd just like to state that I strongly go along with rescinding that contract with Mega. Competition's good, not single payer. That's ridiculous. I don't even know what's gonna be the following year, the year after.
Because we have a contract and it can only go up by the CPI of the,
They can be undercut then.
appreciate your words, but yes. Any other comments on having another public hearing on 1/13/2025? All those in favor?
Aye.
I spoke.
Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor Blake?
I just, general question from my knowledge. Is there any negative impact of opening this back up? I'm all for hearing from the public. I feel like we have heard, and always open to listening more, but I just want to make sure as a town, are there any repercussions?
The biggest one that I see at this point is timing of purchasing the bins and whether they would get here on time. And whatever the contractor has got it started already, but
Thank you.
hopefully 4 weeks won't kill us. Any further discussion? So we'll do this again. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion passes 5-2. You said yay.
Yay or nay?
So it passed 5-2. With Councilor Pierre and myself in the negative.
Thank you, council.
All right, so we can I have a motion to table the new business number 5 until 1/13/2025.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we'll be having a public hearing for a approval of a sound variance for the Portsmouth noise ordinance for South Coast Wind Energy LLC. The occasional after-hours work that might be necessary in construction of the portion of the project in the vicinity of Park Avenue, Boys Lane, and Anthony Road. I would like to make it clear that tonight we are talking about a noise ordinance specifically. We are not talking about wind turbines in the ocean. We are not talking about whales. We are not talking about cables. We are talking about specifically, when you come up to the microphone, talk about the noise ordinance and how it may affect you. If you do not, we will stop. I'm going to ask that South Coast Wind come up and give their presentation on why they think they need this variance. And then we'll have public discussion after that. Good evening. State your name and for the record, please.
Michael Nadeau, attorney here on behalf of South Coast Wind Energy LLC. So I'll just give a very brief introduction and then turn it over to a couple representatives from South Coast Wind. We have several individuals who will speak in support of this application. And just by way of brief background, on October 8, 2024, the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board, known as the EFSB, issued an order and requested several state and local agencies to issue various advisory opinions. And so we appeared recently before the Portsmouth Planning Board and also the Zoning Board for different advisory opinions, which had been requested by the EFSB to those boards. And the request here tonight is for the council to issue a favorable advisory opinion, providing that any necessary construction activities occurring outside of the permitted hours under the noise ordinance be allowed. And so technically, this application isn't for the council to issue a sound variance, but rather to issue an advisory opinion in the nature of a sound variance, since the EFSB is the permitting authority in this instance and not the town. So ultimately, it would be the EFSB that makes this determination based on the advisory opinions received among presentations before that board. And so the sound variance standard, which you're probably all familiar with, it's under section 257-18D of the noise ordinance. And essentially, I won't read it, but essentially requires a balancing of hardships and interests. And so I think based on the materials that were submitted in support of the application and the testimony and information that will be presented to you, that we've met that standard. And as you'll be hearing more about, this is a temporary construction project with no permanent above ground apparatus that will be making noise once it's completed. And there have been a lot of efforts made throughout the planning process to try to minimize and mitigate to the extent practicable adverse effects or potential adverse effects. And so at this point, I have several people that will be calling up. The first two will be Kelsey Perry and Kelly Smith of South Coast Wind. Kelsey Perry is the external affairs manager. Kelly Smith is the onshore package manager, so managing the onshore portion of the construction. After they conclude a brief presentation, we have two outside consulting experts who South Coast Wind is working with. I submitted as part of our application a supplement under a cover letter with both of their resumes. So first we'll have Tom Morcone from Michael's Trenchless Inc. And then Eric Tallhammer of WSP, who was involved in preparing that construction noise report. So he'll be going through that report. And Tom will be getting into more specifics about the HDD construction method and this project in particular and the construction component to it. So now I'll turn it over to Kelsey Perry from South Coast Wind.
Thank you. I believe you should have a packet of a couple of slides in your binder provided to all of the members. I'm not sure if we're able to pull that up for the audience as well. Right there in the front folder of your packet. Yeah. Problem. And I'll just repeat for the record, my name is Kelsey Perry. I'm the External Affairs Manager for South Coast Wind. I've been with the project for over 4 years now, and our local office address is 99 South Main Street in Fall River, Massachusetts. I am going to present two very brief slides, just giving you an overview of our project and our onshore activities in Portsmouth. And then I'll have my colleague Kelly Smith come up and talk more about the construction activities and those particular activities that may require extended construction. So with that, the first slide, just so everyone knows who we are, South Coast Wind, we're developing an offshore wind project in federal waters, about 30 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, 60 miles south of Rhode Island. We're planning to bring the export cable northwest from the lease area, 95 miles through federal waters, Rhode Island state waters, and Massachusetts waters to reach Brayton Point in Somerset, Massachusetts, which used to operate as a coal-fired power plant for over half a century. Is now being repurposed as a renewable energy hub. Recently, South Coast Wind was awarded contracts by the state of Rhode Island and Massachusetts to sell our energy to the states for over 1,200 megawatts. That was awarded in September. And of course, with any large-scale energy project, whether it's conventional or renewable, they come with economic benefits. At the local level, the town of Portsmouth and South Coast Wind have entered into a host community agreement that will provide revenue for the town over the life of the project. And that will go to climate resiliency projects in town or anything that any project that's really up to the town's sole discretion. And from a regional lens, this project not only brings workforce development, supply chain development, it helps contribute to the state's public policy goals around net zero and renewable energy, and also contributes to our grid reliability. And the next slide, please.
I just don't know what it's about. I don't know if she wanted to be on the last one, this one. I didn't
So
listen.
back to what we're talking about here tonight, our onshore activities in Portsmouth. As mentioned, we are planning to
Can
bring
you
the export
text her and see if it was this or the last one?
to make a crossing underneath public roadways in Portsmouth. You can see the route, if you can, on the map, that shows our preferred route, making an entry at Boyd's Lane, again, underneath the roadway, about 3 feet. To the right across Anthony Road, and then underneath Montauk Country Club. As Mike alluded to, this cable route has been studied extensively. It follows existing roads and it prioritizes routes that are avoiding residential neighborhoods. And again, as Mike mentioned, this is an underground cable. There are no above ground structures in Portsmouth. With that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Kelly Smith.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Smith. I'm the onshore package manager for South Coast Wind. So if we could go to the next slide. I'll provide a bit of an overview on the planned construction methodologies for the crossing in Portsmouth, and then a bit of explanation as to why we're seeking this variance and what construction activities are likely to require extended hours. So there are two types of construction planned for the work in Portsmouth. The first is horizontal directional drilling, which we often refer to as HDD for short. And that is a trenchless construction method to tunnel conduits and ultimately our cables as well under sensitive coastal resources, in this case, the beach at Island Park Ave and Montauk Country Club on the other opposite side of the island. So what HDD does, it's a common method for cable and pipeline installation, and it allows the installation to be deep underground. And then between the two sites, we'll use a standard conventional linear trench installation method. So something that folks have been used to seeing for road work, to install sewer and other infrastructure under the roadway, where you excavate linearly along the side of the road. You bury cables, the first phase involves burying conduits and then pouring concrete on top, backfilling and restoring the site. And then coming back in a later phase to pull cables through. So just to give a sense of timeline, we expect the horizontal directional drilling activities to take about 4 months at each site. That would largely take place in the winter months to line up with our current permit conditions from the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And then the work within the public roadway, the civil construction would take about 6 to 12 months. Then we would restore it in a later phase, come back and access the empty pipes through the vault locations, which are about every third of a mile. And that activity to pull cables through the empty conduits takes about 2 months in total. On to the next slide. So I know this is a bit hard to see, apologies. But so to kind of explain why we're seeking the sound variance here in Portsmouth. And the reason is that although the majority of the construction activities will be scheduled to take place during the daytime work window, that's allowed by the ordinance, there are some activities that are sensitive in nature and will require a longer work window, or once started, it would be unsafe to stop if we encountered unexpected conditions that required a longer shift. And then the third example is some equipment might need to run overnight to keep the site safe and secure and to dewater the trench. So there's really select cases where we're looking for longer work hours, and the majority of the work will be during the standard daytime window. To talk about those in a little bit more detail, I mentioned that the HDB campaign is expected to take about 4 months per site. A discrete activity that would require a longer shift is an example, is HDB pipe pullback. And that's where a long section of plastic pipe is fused together and it needs to be pulled through the borehole in one continuous activity. And you need to really be able to do that uninterrupted so that you don't risk compromising the borehole stability, having the pipe get stuck, or having a collapse of the little tunnel that you dug to install the conduit. I mentioned again, the example of select pieces of equipment having to run overnight. An example there would be generators to power local downcast lighting or to run dewatering pumps. And then the third example of activities that would generally be able to conclude in daytime hours that are sensitive to stop if they need to run a little bit long would be pulling cables through segments of the onshore duct bank route and the HDD, where you really need to, for the manufacturer's specification, maintain a pretty constant and steady tension so you're not damaging the cable. And then when you're splicing those segments of cable together, again, that has to follow a very precise set of steps. That if you have to stop once started, you risk invalidating the manufacturer's warranty. So really discrete activities. To put the time frame in perspective, the HDB pipe pullback is about 1 extended shift per trajectory or borehole, and we have 4 trajectories planned per site. So we're really just talking about 4 nights of extended shifts. And the others are not instances of really planned activities. It's more to allow some flexibility if things need to take a little bit longer than we originally planned. Thank you.
And the next 2 witnesses, I think it would be most efficient if I direct them with some questions, and then certainly all of us will be available at the end of the presentation to answer additional questions that the council might have. And before I do that, I should just note, I know that it's covered in my cover letter and several other submissions, but just for the public's benefit, the noise ordinance exempts construction activities occurring between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. So when we say extended hours or after hours, we're talking about any work after 9 p.m. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Sir, excuse me, can I just correct you on that? You said that permitted activities are exempt, is what you should be saying, correct?
That is in the ordinance, correct?
Right.
The town is
You
not the permitting authority for this project.
Okay, the permitting authority is EFSB.
That's correct.
Okay, so you qualify for the exemptions between 9 o'clock and, 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the evening now for 14-hour day.
Well, the work hasn't been permitted yet because the permitting process is not yet complete. So this is one aspect of the permitting process that the EFSB will ultimately consider. If the project is permitted and the construction does proceed, at that point, it will have been a permitted project. So yes, then the construction exemption would apply. So what we need is simply an advisory opinion as to whether South Coast Wind is entitled to the exemption for any work that must occur after 9 p.m.
Thank you for that correction.
And
Clarification.
for the record, as you stated earlier, whether this council gives an opinion or not, it can be overridden by the EFSD.
That's correct. And at this point, I'm going to call up Tom Bertoni. We'll try to both speak into the mic. Mr. Porconi, I know that we submitted your resume. Could you just get a very brief overview of your professional background and experience related to?
Can you just get a little closer so that, especially, mostly for people at home, about 40, 50 people online?
Sure, I'll try to
Thank
paraphrase
you,
that.
please.
Mr. Porconi, could you please just give a very brief overview of your professional background and specifically experience in the field of HDD construction management?
Sure. My name is Tom Falcone. I'm the business manager for Michael's Trenchless Incorporated. I've been with Michael's for 21 years. I've been in the trenchless industry for 29 years. I've managed projects in 44 of the lower 48 states, Middle East, Pacific Islands, and South America.
Thank you. And what generally is HDD or horizontal directional drilling in layman's terms, if you could explain that?
So HDD, or horizontal directional drilling, is a trenchless construction method of installing underground utilities such as pipelines, conduits, and with minimal surface disruption, performed with stationary specialized equipment from one central location.
Are there any benefits to utilizing HDD as a construction method versus other methods?
Sure. The use of HDD allows for deep and stable burial beneath beaches and sensitive nearshore areas, which avoids effects to those areas and effectively mitigates the risk of cable unburial in these areas, meaning these installations are typically very deep, so any chances of them becoming uncovered because of erosion or whatever it may be are very slim. Some of the other bullet points I have here, HDD is used to minimize surface disruptions and for installations crossing rivers, existing infrastructure, and offshore installations. HDD eliminates the need for large-scale excavations and is especially ideal for urban or environmentally sensitive areas. And HDD utilizes no open trenches. Everything happens beneath the ground. HDD allows for quicker installations and minimizes public and existing infrastructure disruptions.
So for this project, where will the HDD, the onshore HDD construction activities be occurring?
So there's 2 locations. Currently, there's 4 drills at each location. One location is, in hoping I'm pronouncing this right, the Montauk Country Club parking lot. And the other location is at the northeast corner of Boyd's Lane and Park Avenue.
And that location at Boyd's Lane and Park Avenue is where the beach is. Will there be any effect to the beach as a result of the HDD construction activities?
There will not be any effect to the beach. The only minor disruption may be for a day's time for each location. And that disruption is just only going to include the tow-out procedure of the HDPE product pipe, which will be fused together on shore. And then prior to the pullback phase of the HDD, be towed to the offshore location.
And what does the HDD equipment include that will be utilized for the HDD portion of this project?
The primary equipment is the drill rig, of course. That's what's going to be doing the drilling. In addition to the drill rig, there's a mud cleaning system and then positive displacement mud pumps.
And Kelly Smith from South Coast Wind just discussed the need at times for HDD work to be continuous. Could you just explain, in your experience, why some HDD work needs to be continuous?
Sure. So for this project, we're actually scheduled right now 6 12-hour days. That's Monday through Saturday. The only phase of the project that would possibly need to continue beyond 9 p.m. would be during the installation of the product pipe itself. And the only reason for that is once you start pulling the product pipe into the hole, like Kelly mentioned, you don't want to stop it. A few things can happen. You can exceed the pull forces that maximum you can apply to the product pipe, and the hole can cave in and the product pipe can actually get stuck, which will then push the schedule to the right and create further disruption.
And what are the different phases of this construction project, and approximately how long would it last for each of those phases?
So the different phases, of course, include mobilization to the site that typically takes around 3 days. That includes setup. Then we begin with pilot hole operations. That's with a small bit, around a 12.25-inch bit that drills the initial hole. Pilot hole operations typically are temporarily stalled out to install surface casing. Surface casing is installed with a drill rig. The pilot hole operations and casing installation typically take a total on this project around 5 to 6 days. After the pilot's hole complete, then we go to the reaming phase. The reaming phase sizes the hole up to approximately 30 inches, which will accommodate the HDPE product pipe. That phase takes another 4 days. After the reaming, we swab the hole. This is just a clean pass to make sure the hole is clean and free of any cuttings or debris prior to the installation phase. The next phase would be the actual installation of the HDPE product pipe. After the installation, we're going to do a short proofing phase just to make sure that the pipe is integrally correct. Install messenger wire, and then the final phase will be demobilization from the site. So total for each drill right now is approximately 30 days.
And what are the typical work hours during the HDD phase of the construction?
6 12-hour days, Monday through Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, we have Eric Tallhammer from WSP, and he submitted the construction noise report. So he'll be presenting that, and again, I'll try to conduct this by direct examination as well, just to make sure that we move as efficiently as possible.
Good evening. My name is Eric Tallheimer. And 1 minute bio. I'm a mechanical engineer with 40 years in the acoustic practices. I've done hundreds of projects over those decades. I am what's known as INS board certified, which means board certified by the Institute of Noise Control Engineering. Germane for tonight, I am WSP's national technical expert for acoustics. WSP is an extremely large worldwide company. More specifically, my notoriety is in construction noise, having managed the construction noise for the big deal in Boston, having written New York City's noise regulation, and having developed Federal Highways construction noise model at hand.
Thank you. And what was the purpose for being engaged to prepare the construction noise report? Did you understand it?
Yeah, it's somewhat standard practice for these sorts of projects, but it was really to provide due diligence and full good faith disclosure of what we professionally anticipate to be the noise levels from this HDD work that may affect the public. And then to evaluate those noise levels against any relevant ordinances or regulations.
And could you briefly walk us through the methodology and conclusions of your report that was submitted?
Sure. The methodology, again, was fairly typical, quite standard of the acoustic industry. First, there was a project understanding of the relevant regulations. Ambient noise measurements were performed throughout the area, but I will say that those levels do not have a bearing in the results because of the way the ordinance is written. We then tried to model what future noise levels would be anticipated to be from these two HDD onshore sites and how those levels may affect the public.
And what were the locations where noise measurements were taken?
The measurements were taken at 4 locations along proximity of the corridor of the project. I don't have the specific street addresses to relate to you.
But those coordinates are in your report, correct?
That's right, latitude, longitude.
And what was the equipment that you used to conduct those measurements?
Yeah, the ambient noise measurements were done by an acoustical engineer using a Larson Davis model 831 precision sound level meter. That device meets ANSI standard S 1.4 for what's known as type 1 accuracy and quality, which is engineering grade.
And how close to the nearest residential property is the HDD construction activity anticipated to occur?
Yeah, based on the 2 fixed sites, the onshore sites. The Boyd's Lane site is approximately 560 feet to the nearest residential property on Park Avenue. And the Montauk Country Club site is about 845 feet to its nearest residential abutter on Attleboro Avenue.
And how close would the nearest residence be to where the linear trenching and cable installation would occur?
Yeah, that would occur along Boyd's Lane, and the work will be on the east side of the lane. The nearest abutters or neighborhood would be on the west side. So it's essentially the width of the street.
What kind of model did you use to determine what effect noise from the construction might have on residents?
Yeah, we used an industry standard model called Cadna A. It's developed by a German company called Data Acoustic. It's used worldwide for this sort of prediction and propagation of outdoor noise. It meets an international standard number 9613 to do so. And it allows us to create any situations we wish, put in noise sources, put in various conditions, and then to project or predict resulting noise levels.
So what were the assumptions that were input into that model when you studied the noise that's the subject of this project?
Yeah, they were for quite the most part what we call conservative assumptions, meaning worst case noise. The assumption was that there would be critical grade silencers on some of the equipment, on all of the equipment where applicable. That is on the less conservative side, but it's a commitment. The more conservative assumptions were that we assumed all the equipment was operating at one time and at full power, that there was no intervening shielding provided by terrain or buildings or any kind of structure, that the ground was semi or totally reflective, that there was no foliage to block sound, and that there was what's known as a favorable wind condition, which means the wind is blowing towards the community.
And I don't know if we can put it up on the screen, but in your report, table 9, which is on page 23 of the report, lists various construction equipment and corresponding noise levels. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
And where did the information come from that you used to compile that table 9?
Yeah, thank you. The equipment noise emission levels that we used in our modeling were given to us by the client, by South Coast Wind. We then reviewed those noise levels as a reality check. They seem very consistent to us. And so we did run with them in our. Just want to make people aware, do not confuse common mistake, power with sound pressure. That table 9 shows sound power, which is a characteristic of the source, like its color. Sound pressure is what we hear. So the noise model takes sound power as a starting point and then predicts sound pressure wherever you wish.
And on pages 24 and 25 of the report, figures 6 and 7, those are 2 contour maps. Could you just walk us through those and what they depict?
Yeah, these contour maps, and thank you for showing them. This is derived from that Cadna A noise model. We call them isoclep, or equal sound level contours. You can think of it as a topographical elevation map, except it's for sound level. And it shows how the model has computed how sound radiates from the 2 sites, interacts with the ground, interacts with anything that may be, again, intervening. And then what are sort of the noise levels expected at various distances. And so these lines that you're seeing are shown in 1 decibel increments. Obviously, it gets quieter the farther away you move, and the color changes are just shown every 5 decibels.
And what did you determine as part of your study and conclude would be the anticipated noise levels at the property boundaries which are closest to where the construction will be occurring?
Yeah, for the, again, focusing on the HDD construction, which is what the subject is here for nighttime. Noise levels, again, on these conservative assumptions are expected to be about 61 decibels on Park Avenue, which is the closest to the Boys Lane site. And less, 58 decibels at the nearest receptor, Attleboro Avenue, which is closest to the Montauk site.
And your report also lists out some mitigation measures or considerations that were incorporated into the project. Do you have an opinion as to how those may further mitigate any noise impacts from the project?
Yeah, the list of commitments provided in the report are current best industry practices. They try to address noise at the source as well as along the pathway. And it makes use of trying to avoid noise, move equipment farthest away. It's much as common sense, but it does need to be stated.
And did you consider cumulative noise effects as part of your review?
Yes, we cumulative, again, meaning in our modeling, we assumed, again, conservative condition, all equipment on site running at full power. And so we predicted loudest or worst case noise condition.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
So I did want to come back and just list out some of the mitigations that were referred to already. So we have committed already to minimize the amount of work conducted outside of daytime hours, to maintain construction equipment with functioning mufflers and use newer models when available to provide the quietest performance. Eric already mentioned the use of critical plus grade silencers, particularly on all of the HD equipment with exhausts. To make sure to turn off construction equipment when not in use and minimize idling times. And that also includes compliance with the Rhode Island diesel engine anti-idling program. requiring that continuous noise sources such as generators and compressors be located as far from residential properties as possible along the route, and having close mufflers, and then using low noise generators to reduce noise impacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have a couple of quick questions that were brought up by folks at home. One, which is, I'm going to kind of paraphrase what you said, but what is the responsibility for South Coast Wind? Should there be any damage to neighboring properties during the process? Specifically, I would guess not so much for noise, but the vibration of equipment either underground or while they're doing the digging on Boyd Lane or Anthony Road. How would that be addressed?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So our project, as you can see, will be working with, all of the construction will be performed by industry-leading contractors who will be insured. So as issues arise during construction, we'll handle them on a case-by-case basis.
Are you planning on inspecting neighboring properties prior to doing the construction so that you can ascertain whether the damage happened prior to the construction or after or during the construction? If so requested by a homeowner.
I think I'll let Kelsey jump back in, but I guess I wanted to, before we go down a path too far, I wanted to set expectations a bit around, I think vibration was the topic in question. First, with the horizontal directional drilling, that's not an activity that produces percussive sound. So if you were to compare it to activities in your household, you're drilling a screw, not hammering a nail. So there's not expected to be noticeable vibrations from the HGV activities. The work along the onshore route in public roadway will use standard typical utility style construction. So what folks, again, are used to experiencing living near roadways. When you're restoring a road, there are activities to put it back into its right state and make sure it can support traffic and other heavy vehicles. And so you do have to compact backfill. You do have to apply new pavement. And that can have some sorts of compaction and other vibratory nature, but it's nothing, I'm a little concerned that there's maybe not the right perspective on what this is going to look like. And so there really are not major vibrations expected from this construction.
Previous testimony from South Coast Wind was that the channel was going to be done on the edge of the road, not in the road. Have you changed the location of where you're planning on digging?
Work will be done in the road shoulder. I expect it to use a portion of the lane and also as much of the shoulder as possible, making sure that we're avoiding wetlands. But there's also, I think, as I mentioned earlier, there are locations along the route where we'll need to install underground vaults. So that has a little bit of a bigger footprint in those select locations.
And this is not for you, this is for our legal team, but I assume the question is, does the town have any liability? And I would assume the answer is no during this construction process. Any questions from counselors at this point in time? If not, we'll open up the public hearing. Councilor Blank, sure. If you'd like. You raise your hand first.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. A few questions I have. Can you tell me about the depth and the diameter of the hole of the HGV and then also the depth of the trench?
So the horizontal directional drilling takes a path that's really like an arced path under the beach and under the country club. So it'll dive to depths of around 40 feet. The hole diameter approximately 30 inches in diameter, and then the plastic pipe that will be installed expected to be about 16 to 20 inches in diameter. The work in roadway would have a minimum burial depth of 3 feet, so we'll probably need to dig down to around 6 feet to install the conduits and to pour the concrete on top. Was that all the questions?
You had mentioned a few of your durations for the plan, and I'm just looking for some clarification of the overall timeframe of when you expect this to.
So the construction is expected to start in 2026. The civil construction in the roadways is the longest phase, and we're expecting about 6 to 12 months for that portion. And then we would come back in a subsequent phase to pull the cables through the empty conduits, and that requires about 2 months. The HGV work I mentioned takes about 4 months at each site. Some of this will be happening in parallel, so I guess at minimum, we would add together the civil construction along the onshore route plus the cable pulling, in about 14 months spread across maybe 2 seasons, 2 winter seasons.
So am I hearing you correct, about 14 months?
But approximately,
Duration?
some of the phasing and the parallel nature of different activities, we're still working out, and of course, we have to permit with Rhode Island DOT as well. And they'll have their own time of year considerations, so it's a little bit to be determined how much of the work we can do in parallel.
Do you have more than one HDD equipment that would be, I know you have to do before then, that you'll be able to do these in parallel, a series?
I imagine that it would be possible to do both sites in parallel, possibly, so that would be the Montauk Country Club and Boys Lane and Park Ave. It's not due to space constraints, it's not going to be possible to do all the trajectories at each site simultaneously, so that's why the 4 month assumes that those are happening in series.
Can you tell me about the number of vaults that there would be?
I might not have I might have to count them.
You can give me an approximate.
So we're
3 or 30.
Yeah, so it's about, so we're proposing to build conduits and vaults for 4 power cables, even though the first project would involve installing just 2 power cables for 1,200 megawatts. So at each site where there are vaults, we would expect to build 2 at one time. So that increases the count a little bit. So you would need 2 vaults at each landfall site to transition the cables from offshore cables to onshore, and then every 1/3 of a mile in between. So I want to say, I don't want to give you the wrong figure, I'm sorry.
That's okay, we can come back to it.
Okay.
Um,
About 12.
approximately. I assume the vaults will take a larger footprint and longer time frame. Is that accurate? Than the trench.
The vaults, we're evaluating whether they'll need to, whether they could be precast. It could be delivered in place in one, I guess, a kind of a simpler sequence versus cast in place concrete. But this is the type of activity that it's going to be within daytime hours.
In the noise ordinance, request, can you tell me what your expectations in the hours outside of those ordinance? I know HDD drilling doesn't need to be 24/7. Is my expectation correct that it will be throughout the entire night?
No,
Help me understand this.
most of the horizontal directional drilling campaign in the 4 months will be during this standard 12-hour work shift. And then there's really just a few select instances where we might have to run longer shifts. And I think we said possible 24/7, but it might not take that much of it in the night. And so the activity we cited was pipe pullback. And you only need to do that once per trajectory, so 4 times per site. So that's 4 overnights. So 4 overnights at the beach and then 4 overnights at the country club.
What would be your expected decibels for that full overnight? The loudest part of that overnight session?
Conservatively, for the sound modeling for the horizontal directional drilling, we did consider all the equipment running at once, so that would be a really conservative case. And modeled about 60 decibels at the nearest residential property boundaries, which compares well to conversational speech. And the noise ordinance limit for nighttime activities is 55 decibels, so it's not a significant number over the standard nighttime expected noise levels.
When I had read through the noise request ordinance variance, it had up to 95 decibels. Can you help me understand that?
Sure. So along the underground, the linear trenching route, that's maybe an even more conservative analysis. So along the underground route, we wouldn't plan to do overnight activities. That the case where the cases for that portion of the route are really tied to activities running longer than expected that are sensitive and need to be finished, or pieces of equipment that would be needed to keep the site safe and free from water. So conservatively, we use unmitigated values for that portion of the analysis, and it's considering generators to power lights and pumps. And also if, an example activity would be cable pulling and needing to maintain pumps in tension to preserve the manufacturer warranty. If that had to run longer than expected because the team ran into something, I think that equipment came in around the 90 to 100 decibels unmitigated.
And to help for my knowledge, you're building a trench next to a marsh. Is it fair to assume that there will be water mitigation needed throughout the night?
It's fair to assume that we'll need some dewatering solution for most of the trenching along Boyd Lane.
Thank you. How long would South Coast cover any repairs or issues that might be caused? I know like right after you're paid. Is there a duration afterwards of if there's washout or anything? Is that something you could get back to me on? If you don't know.
If there's any issues after the road is resurfaced,
Yeah.
during operations.
Yeah, the water follows the flow of the cable and washes out like in that marshland area.
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have plans for that right now. Once the construction is complete in Portsmouth, the transmission system will be unmanned and just have pretty infrequent checks on it. So ideally at that point, there would be issues.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Have points that might. I was just gonna say that most of the work in roadway is along state-owned roads, so they'll have their standards that will be held to, and then they typically also have their own inspectors to check on things. So it will be built to state standards. That's all up to that.
Yeah. Say you finish, the road is built. 2 days later, there's a major washout at the assumption that you would come back and help us out, or is that incorrect?
So the way the construction is phased, we would still be working on the project, so we wouldn't be done yet, so we would have to absolutely. So we would be.
If it was a month after?
I don't know if you want to say something about it.
Yeah, I think this is maybe getting into the case by case basis territory, but we plan to be partners with residents for the long term, so we'll be available to help us.
Councilor Bright, can we also just kind of narrow it down just the specific about the noise?
Sure.
Thank you.
So as an engineer, the shortest path is a straight line. Can you help me understand why we're doing the drilling and need this noise ordinance if you're going to the east of us and it is an underwater cable, which is what it's designed to do, and you're ending up east of us to the north? Why do you need to drill through our town if you're going from the east to the east? And we're an island.
We did. I certainly understand the question. We did do a routing analysis of the different options to bring our cables to Brighton Point for interconnection. The challenge with continuing up the northern Seconic River is the tight bridge abutments, and a lot of that was demolished in place. So you've got large chunks of material on the bed, you've got mooring fields, and most importantly, you've got really tight clearances for the installation and deep scour holes. So the concern is about being able to safely bury and protect cables of the Seconic.
Was it looked at all to just do the HDD through Montauk and like go through the code? Had that been looked at? And not
It
pick
had.
up roads?
It had, and I think that would just be pushing the limits of about how far you can do a single HDD, but another big challenge there is, even if you're drilling deep underground and not disrupting the land surface, there's still private property rights all the way to I don't know if this is legally correct, but all the way to the core of the earth. So there's a lot of landowners and additional challenges to a straight across route that weren't feasible for the project.
Councilor Blake, I'm sorry. I'm gonna try and redirect you back to just specifically the noise ordinance. If you
No,
have
this-
other
This is
questions.
still on the noise,
Yeah,
but that it would mitigate noise to not do the trench digging, and
Right.
you're already gonna be digging through on top to just dig through on. That had been considered, can you tell me more about that?
Just as far as, we did look at what it would be like to HG all the way across the island from offshore to offshore location.
I'm sorry, I know I misunderstood. To do the HDD across Boys, go through the cove, or like go up on the bridge, go through the cove, and then just do the drilling underneath.
There's still a challenge with the land rights and the permit requirements to be outside of the public roadway. It's certainly preferable to site within previously disturbed roadway right of way.
Except for the 14 months.
I guess one point I would come back to with respect to the dewatering pumps is the linear trench installation is a moving setup. So you are thinking about maybe 100 foot per day rate of progress. And so with that rate of progress, the construction is really only set up in front of any given set of houses, for example, for approximately 2 weeks. So there is a time frame here. It's not everyone experiencing the same sound for 14 months.
Am I hearing you correct that your estimate for the longest duration someone would be affected by this is approximately 2 months because of the move?
For the linear trench in the roadway, I think I would approximate around 2 weeks. But there's a little bit of variability depending on subsurface and utility conditions that can make any given stretch go a little longer, but I think that's a good ballpark estimate.
And then what are your plans if this is an old island, you've been on it a while. What are your plans if you come across colonial or indigenous artifacts in your day?
I'm going to turn to a colleague in case he wants to step in.
Is that off noise? Is that not noisy?
It's definitely not noisy, but if they come across indigenous artifacts, they have to stop.
Yeah,
That's the law.
I'll give a very high level answer, which is there's a very rigorous permitting process that we're going through across federal and state agencies. And there certainly are conditions applicable to the project related to archaeological monitoring during construction.
Thank you very much.
So I let Councilor Blank go a little astray on noise. I'm gonna try and reel everybody else in to try and keep this specifically to the noise variance. And again, this is a noise variance opinion of the council. The council is not granting a variance. It is the council's opinion as to whether or not a variance should be granted by the EFSD. So please don't come up and yell at the council that we can't grant this variance. We are not granting a variance. We're providing a opinion as to one should be granted. So we will begin with the gentleman in the front, but you've been standing there the longest.
Hi.
And again, yeah, I was gonna just remind you to state your name and your address for the record for the clerk. Thank
Bobby
you.
Warmack, 1516, Riverside Ave, I live in Somerset. I'm a member of Local 56. I have been for 10, almost 15 years now. I personally have been working on the windmill projects for the last 3.5+ years, almost 4 years now. Southport, Vineyard Wind, the Revolution Wind. I've done the cable poles, I've done the directional drilling with Michaels.
Stay a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, sorry.
It's
I've done
okay.
directional drilling with Michaels. I was always on the day shift. And very, very, very rarely would we ever go into any extended period of time, even during the actual pulling of the HDP pipe.
It's okay, you're doing fine.
But that's it. So I've been there, I've done it, I don't see it on paper. I'm actually one of the guys who's out in the field doing it. It does very rarely, for what they're asking for, most of our, 99% of our work is done, during that 12-hour period. And, that's really it. Just speaking from the trenches, not or anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Forgione.
Joe Forgione, 28 Gwinnett Ave, Portsmouth. Great questions. By the way, I'll be very brief, 2 to 3 minutes. I have 2 questions and a recommendation. So, as some of you know, I've been up here before. I was against the route. I accepted. But I did make a point at that time. I made a point that the reason it shouldn't go through a residential community, and by the way, there are residences, somebody said there were residences on Park Ave, where they have people live in those houses, was because of noise and disruption. I said that at a town council meeting, never knowing that we would be back here a couple of years later addressing the issue. And this is the reason why states of New York, I'm affiliated now with the national group, and states of New Jersey have mandated that it must be an industrial site. I use those words, industrial site, because it has to be someplace like Quonset. Great. Not cutting across, and I will go to my grave saying that the reason it's going across Portsmouth is to reduce the costs of South Coast, formerly Mayflower Wind. The reason I want to make that point is because we're now at a point where I believe this is also being driven by costs, okay? So my first question for the town of Portsmouth, and anybody could ask, have we independently, through our own engineering consultant, this guy had a lot of good things to say. He may be right or he may be wrong, but they have a point of view, which is to get the project done, these costs, and they articulated lots of good scientific engineering data. But don't you think we need to make a decision based upon an independent assessment? This is like going to a court of law. You only have a prosecutor, no defense, okay? So I think, if I had a couple of months, sat down, I'd be able to ask a lot of questions, and maybe I would say, okay, you're using state-of-the-art noise abatement procedures, which, by the way, I've learned in just a couple of days through my content. I've got an electrical engineering degree from MIT, and I have a lot of contacts that people build tunnels in cities under hospitals, and they have state-of-the-art noise abatement procedures that they use. So the question, like you and your team, is are you willing to commit to the town residents that you will bear no expense to use anything that's out there necessary in order to minimize the noise disruption day and night? You mentioned some of the measures, but are you willing to make that commitment?
To an open-ended amount of money
Yes.
for
Yes.
unknown
That you will.
materials and methods.
Okay, yes,
I don't think anyone
okay. So
admits that.
during the consideration for the city, both city agreement, with some of us opposed, I accept it now. They said, okay, you won't even know that we're doing it. It will be non-intrusive, or very little impact, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So they may be 100% right, or they may be very wrong. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask elderly residents in Island Park to maybe a few nights a year or a month to be disrupted at night so that they could get something done a little bit faster and a little bit cheaper. Okay, it's just a recommendation. I would say that we accept the host city agreement. I would challenge that if you really want to be a good community member, you get up here and you withdraw the request and respect the people of Portsmouth that you want to be a host city for, because this is incredibly disrespectful to basically say, once in a while we may keep you up at night, No, it's not necessary. And it's disrespectful. And they may not be able to make that kind of commitment, because, you know, it's engineering and things happen. But we can make the commitment that we're not gonna give you an opinion or ordinance or whatever word you want to put it, to basically allow you to keep the residents of Portsmouth up at night. So that's my position, and, you know, I would be just totally astounded if this got approved as it was presented, you know, based upon a one-sided opinion from a developer who, you know, has an agenda. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Barry, few questions. I've listened to a lot of data tonight, so I ask for verification of my understanding. But I would like to begin by saying, I do understand that this hearing is to support the town's opinion to Facility Siting Board on the ordinance waiver of the noise. And I presume that the town will listen to its citizens and incorporate their concerns in that opinion. You know, the Facility Siting Board may be making the decision, but they wouldn't be having this public hearing. They wouldn't be asking the town's opinion if either one of those things didn't count at all. So I presume that they have some weight, Facilities Board. Some of the questions I've had have been answered, so I'll skip over them. My understanding of the noise levels and the technical evaluation is that at the first residential property at 568 feet, the Island Park and Boyd's Lane facility or site is 61 dB when that when the current ordinance says it should be 55. So the variance is going to be changing in that regard. And that it is 55 dB at the nearest house to the Montauk facility for the operation there. If I've got that wrong, I'd like somebody to tell me what the right one is.
58 at Montauk. 58 decibels at the Montauk.
My question for the council is the town of Portsmouth going to be monitoring the noise levels?
If a complaint is brought to the police department, they will go down and investigate. But chances are, when they get there, it may not be the same issue we have at Old Mill Lane, same issue we have at other noise ordinance. It has to be happening when the police show up with their decibel reading. So if a resident calls the police and files a complaint of a violation of the noise ordinance, they are required to go down there. Now, we have a limited police force, so if there is multiple car accidents, which happens a lot, they may not get there right away. So I do couch that they will get there, but they may not get there when the resident needs them to be there.
That you know, I understand the car accident requirements, all that sort of things come up.
Well, that's just an example.
But I would suggest that the equipment should be checked out so that it's ready to go. They're not looking around the back room, the closet.
I know Chief Peters knows exactly where that equipment is, and it'll be at the ready when needed.
I'm pretty sure I'll have to be. Thank you. All right. Now this, as I understand this variance, it will be covering essentially the entire day, right? It's essentially after 9 p.m. for the rest of the night. So I guess we just keep going. We've heard testimony to the effect that once they reach certain phases of this
boring and pulling the pipe through, they're gonna keep going, understand the engineering necessities. But this may very well go all the way through the night in the lab. Lab disturbance. And, so if that's wrong, somebody should tell me. Hearing no dispute, I'll assume that's correct.
It's not,
No.
if you want to finish your comments, maybe we can address.
You can address them after he's finished.
All right, this one.
Just take notes and come up and finish afterwards.
What happens to this variance when the project is done? Is this variance going to be available to any follow-on company that comes through the town and boring holes?
No, each individual contract or each individual organization has to get their own variance. So if West Coast Wind wants to come through and, sorry, just playing a name, wants to come through, West Coast Wind has to go through the exact same process that they've gone through. And with the SSB, they would have to come back and say, we want our own host community agreement. The whole process would start over again.
So once this project is complete, South Coast Wind, then the ordinance goes back to its current state, correct?
Our ordinance isn't changing. The variance that there is being requested is a variance of our ordinance to the EFSB.
Well,
Again, we're providing an opinion as to whether or not we think they should allow
I
it.
understand.
So
It
it
is our ordinance, right?
is our ordinance, correct? The ordinance is not
My
changing.
question is, will the ordinance return to its current writing?
The ordinance doesn't change. A variance is granted, just like if you were to request a variance to put a shed closer to your property line,
Then I'll rephrase.
okay?
Will the variance expire when this project is done?
I don't know how it's written in the specific variance. You can answer this after it's done, after you just
My concern
write down all the
is-
questions.
My concern is that we're opening this thing up to other variations, other purposes. Citing this. Right, I have a question from one of our members of the BCC, of course, the Concerned Citizens. On Friday afternoon last, December 6th, there was a very loud machinery noises in Island Park. I presume that was not this project. I'd like somebody to say, no, it wasn't us.
That was not Southwest.
Thank you. So that's the end of my questions.
You would like to come and address those 2 points of when the variance ends? I forgot the other one, I'm
I
sorry.
have the other one.
Okay, please,
Yeah,
thank you.
So I think the comparison to a zoning variance, I think it's good in some ways, but the issue of the permanency is very different. So with a zoning variance, that is something that runs with the land, so that's essentially a permanent entitlement that continues on to the owner's successors and interests. This is just a temporary construction project, so the variance is for just the construction while it's occurring, and once that project's complete, these underground lines aren't going to produce any noise. The variance will terminate at that point because the activities will have ceased.
So to follow up on that question, then if you were to come back and do a repair project that required overnight work in the future, let's say, I don't know, a meteor hits your line, you would be required to come back and do another variance. Worst case scenario. You cannot go back and say, hey, we have this variance for the beginning of the project. We have to come back for a repair variance in order to do that.
So as an emergency repair, that might be exempt anyways, but if there were to be any kind of ongoing work, which I mean, I think would be very unlikely given the type of installation that this is. That would need to be coordinated with not just the town, but DOT, since the majority of this cable route is underneath state-owned roadway.
Right.
So it would be part of a larger coordination effort. They wouldn't just go out there and start digging up the road.
Understood. but the variance would not be carried forth for a repair project. As you stated, once the installation is done, the variance ends.
The variance is certainly tied to construction. Throughout the rest of our permitting processes, with the Rhode Island Energy Facility Study Board, there may be an additional condition that allows for emergency work. And I think for safe operation, that's in everyone's best interest with respect to electric power generation. But once they're installed, they're underground, they're inert, so we're not going to be here and producing noise operationally for the rest of the project.
And question number 1. Mr. Fitzmaurice, I'm sorry, did you get them both answered to your satisfaction?
I don't think so. The other one was about whether the variance will allow all the construction to go 24/7. Do I have that correct? And I think what's really important from the presentation is that we're talking about select activities and a few select occurrences. So a few activities that require longer continuous work shifts, the HGV pullback
Get Rich ready.
was given there. And then select the pieces of
Emily.
equipment operating overnight, like generators or dewatering pumps. And select activities if you encounter unexpected conditions that cause them to go longer than the scheduled timeframe. So for the first thing I listed, that's 4 overnight shifts per site. And the second 2 I listed, the dewatering pumps and generator, that's could be a continuous overnight situation, but it's only for a certain section of the roadway, and then it's moving as we advance the construction approximately at a 2-week interval. And then the third situation I described, we would have 0 days scheduled for that. It's really just an unexpected condition.
Okay, I am going to switch real quick. You'll be next, but there's somebody who's been patiently with their virtual hand up for the past hour and a half. So Emily.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emily Skian. I'm at 40 Cutler Court in Portsmouth. I'd like to express my support for South Coast Wind's request for this noise variance for the Energy Siting Facility Board approval. I have a master's in marine science and I have coursework in acoustical oceanography. I've also worked on the Navy acoustic effects model, and I'm very familiar and reviewed the modeling study that was provided in this report and agree with their conservative modeling scenarios, as well as the mitigation measures that would be put into place. I feel that the range of acoustic impacts is reasonable, and I feel as a resident, the benefit of this project is tremendously important for not only the support that they've given this town, but for the overall long-term impacts of having an offshore wind renewable project. My family also has a house in Wainscott in Long Island where South Coast Wind has already completed the cable installation. The exact same process was completed, and I have reviewed it from the start all throughout and to see the completion. There were no impacts to and it was in a residential area. All the mitigation measures that are put into place are effective, especially with horizontal drilling and the depths that they go. So I think the occasional opportunities when the night hours would need to be utilized would be very sparse and not regularly scheduled. And again, this nighttime construction is common practice for any utility and infrastructure project. We've already just heard about the gas project in Old Mill. The debate about that wasn't as extensive, and all of the same processes were put into place for that. So I feel that the construction activities requiring this noise variance are very short term, and the benefits will be long term and positive impacts for our community. I think South Coast Wind's plans to implement the mitigation measures, like the critical plus grade silencers, are using the best available technology to minimize impacts, as well as the idling requirements that the state has. And approving this variance is an essential step towards the project being constructed in a safely and efficient and timely manner. I would not want to delay this project any longer by not supporting this step tonight. And I do think South Coast Wind has demonstrated commitment to the community and would see this project through to completion in a reasonable way. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for your patience.
Hi.
Just your name and address for the record, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Sarah Dunn. I live at 34 Valhalla Drive. My family and my husband and my son and I moved to Portsmouth in May of this year. It's our first home in Portsmouth, and we're very excited to be here and raise our family here. I would like to voice my concerns about the application for variance against the sound ordinance. From the company South Coast Wind's website, and also what they explained tonight, I can see that their plan is to set up a horizontal directional drill and the generators used to run these drills at the intersections of Boyd's Lane and Park Avenue, as well as at the golf course. And that a drill and pipe will bore its way up Boyd's Lane, according to them, 12 hours a day, from Monday through Saturday, during the school year.
Just to correct on that, the drilling would go out to the water. The trenching would go up Poison.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for the correction.
It's okay.
This will occur during the school year for 3 to 6 months on their website. In order, and this would have little impact on the high tourist season and seasonal residents, but of course, for full-time residents, it will impact us. From how the town ordinance is written, I understand the company is allowed to do this drilling construction work from 7 a.m. in the morning until 9 p.m. at night. From how the variance is written, I understand the company is asking for permission to work after 9 p.m. because they may want to work through the night. That would mean these generators, the drills, and all their machinery could be running 24/7. My son is 5, he just turned 5 on Friday, and though he may not always want to, like all children, he needs sleep at night in order to grow and to be able to learn and focus at school. My husband had to take him home to bed, so I'm just going to read what my husband was going to say. South Coast Wind study estimates continuous noise levels of 55 to 70 decibels, potentially 24 hours a day, in our neighborhood and for the duration of the project. This noise range is from constant loud conversation to being right next to a vacuum. And it would persist day and night on those days that they mentioned they'd be doing 24 hours, disrupting residents or children along the cable route. This is in stark contrast to our neighborhood's normal nighttime levels of 39 decibels, the sound of a quiet library, soft whispers, or rustling leaves. An increase to 55 to 70 dBA would make nighttime noise feel up to 4 times louder, destroying the peace our community relies on for rest. Even worse, these estimates depend on new equipment and noise abatement measures. If those measures fail or are delayed, residents could face even higher noise levels than represented. The project already has 14 hours of unrestricted noise from 7 in the morning to 9 p.m., which is more than enough time to disrupt our neighborhood. Extending noise into nighttime hours is unacceptable. They didn't say they couldn't stop after 14 hours, and a company has a fiduciary responsibility and is ultimately responsible to their investors. It is their compass, it is the driving force behind their decision-making. But a town is not a company. A town, as you know, is a community made up of people, and we are responsible to our people. With a new project, there are many unanswered questions. We do not know yet how seriously this construction work will affect public health, safety, and the quality of life for Portsmouth full-time residents. Please be prudent with our rights. What we do know is right now, in the town of Portsmouth, this ordinance protects everyone's right to sleep in their own home at night. Please continue to protect our right to sleep in our homes. Please protect all of Portsmouth's children, including my son, and their ability to grow and learn by having proper sleep. you would want the same for yourselves and your children and grandchildren. I am in opposition to this variance request, as it represents the opposite of what we moved to Portsmouth for. We came to Portsmouth for a place to raise our family in peace and safety. We're all for green energy. We're just saying our neighborhood's already doing the heavy lifting for this project. Please let us sleep at night. Please recommend the EFSB to oppose this variance. Please continue to protect us, your full-time residents, and everyone's quality of life. Thank you.
You could have let her, before I forget, when is your hearing for the noise variance for the FSD? Has that been slated on the docket yet?
No, so,
Can you just speak in the mic real quick for me?
What was your question?
There is a specific hearing at the Energy Facility Siting Board for their variance. This is not the hearing for the variance. This is an opinion for the variance. Folks who want to make their opinion known to the EFSB need to follow along and know when that variance hearing is at the Public Utilities up on Jefferson Boulevard in beautiful Cranston. But it hasn't been scheduled yet.
no, so there's a 4-month period from when the EFSB issued that order in October, which brings the deadline for advisory opinions to be filed to February 7th. Right now, within that period, like I had said before, there are a number of other advisory opinions that were requested by various state and local agencies as part of the process, and then they'll collect all those, and then there will be a hearing on all of this later on.
Sometime in the spring. And it would be at that point when the window opens up for the hearing that people would be able to provide written documentation that they are for or against the variance, right?
Yes, that's.
Yes, so after the advisory opinion process is complete on February 7th, the Rhode Island EFSB will schedule a hearing from there, and we'll post it on our website and make the town residents know.
And that's when, if somebody would like to put something in writing, or if they would like to specifically go that day, they can go.
Yes, they're welcome to attend and participate and voice their concerns.
Thank you both. Appreciate that. I appreciate your indulgence in my questions. Yes, sir.
Kevin Fantasy, 2774 East Main Road. Excuse me. A couple of points of clarification I could address to these folks. What would be, and I need a little bit of a differentiation between the time that the digging for the cable begins at just off Satchellus Point, the beginning of the Secundit River, and the time that it reaches land in Island Park. What's that duration expectation?
If I understand correctly, you're asking about the offshore cable installation in the Secundit River.
Yes.
Approximately, that moves pretty quickly, approximately 16 days.
Okay. To go from Satchellus Point to, or to go from the transmission tower to Island Park.
If my recollection is correct from our cables lead, it's the duration to go up the Secundit River.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is there a differentiation between the equipment that's being used and the noise level that will be created by that equipment and the equipment that's being used once you get to the shore and go underground?
They are different construction and installation methodologies, offshore versus onshore. Offshore is using a vessel that's moving as it's doing the installation, and it's doing a simultaneous lay and bury in the riverbed. So it moves quite quickly. You're really just experiencing the vessel going by. That, however, would not be the subject of this variance.
Well, I understand that. I'm talking about the relationship of the noise that would be created by that portion of the trenching.
There really isn't a
The noise variance that is subject tonight doesn't have anything to do with the Secundit River until it gets to the injection point at Island Park Beach. So the
Well, what
equipment.
about the hundreds of homes that exist along the Secundit River from Middletown until you get to Island Park?
that's not part of the ordinance that we're speaking of tonight. And I'm not an expert, but I don't think it makes that much noise. It's under, most of the equipment is underwater. And the noise would be similar to a fishing boat going by. For that part of the process.
And sorry, if I could just note, this goes back to an earlier comment. So in section 257-7 of the noise ordinance, the time is at all times, and the decibel limit is 75 decibels in the public water category. So, you know, even if you were looking at that, that's a different standard than what we've been talking about for the occasional nighttime work outside of that construction exemption.
And Mr. Fennessy, and I appreciate your questions for all the folks who have houses along the shore, but our noise ordinance does not pertain to the middle of the Secaucus River, unfortunately. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mrs. Mel.
Hi, Carol. Carol.
Thank you.
Carol Mello, 58 Massasoit. Oh dear. Okay, so the Massachusetts Department, and this is, it regulates noise. This is Massachusetts. I couldn't find the one. It regulates noise emissions as a form of air pollution. So there really is air pollution control. Regulation states that it can't raise the levels to more than 10 decibels. So their baseline is 45 decibels, so no one can go 10 decibels higher. I'm a little concerned about 95 decibels, 75 decibels. 61 decibels, the numbers that I'm hearing tonight, being in residential areas, which they're saying they're avoiding residential neighborhoods. No, they're not. People live all along this whole area, and I agree with someone saying that we need to have an independent study that measures all of these frequencies and even the electromagnetic frequencies and exposure from cables and effects on human and animal health and their habitat. That's us. I'm concerned about, and I don't know if we have any of these, maybe they can answer, 5G antennas, noise levels, cooling fans, gearboxes, generators, auxiliary equipment, door drives. I don't know how much noise all of these things make, but they are part of a whole wind turbine. Equipment, all of that equipment. What concerns me about the noise is the level of intensity, the frequency distribution, and the patterns of the noise. When the wind moves in a certain way, the noise is definitely going to be louder. So if it's starting out at 95 decibels, it could be 102 by the time it reaches you. The terrain between the emitter, and that's what I mean about the terrain. So it could be, that definitely could affect it. So there's plenty of adverse effects of exposure to sound that's way over the decibel levels that is acceptable, which could be speech interference, noise-inducing hearing loss, just plain annoyance, because people are annoyed when they hear those noises. Sleep disturbance, which is what that person just said about her 5-year-old child who's trying to sleep. And other adverse effects, which could, in some cases, if it's really loud enough, injure air-containing organs, not only the middle ear, but lungs and intestines too. Chronic stress, even with low-level sounds, can happen. I've actually seen specials in other countries where people have been very physically affected by the wind turbines, and I know it's not wind turbines. But it's all related to all this equipment and all the noise that it's gonna create. And also vibration exposure. So obviously, I'm totally against this. Variance, for lots of reasons, I think 12 hours of counting and listening to generators and all this other equipment is gonna be way more than most of us even wanna do in the first place. And to have this happen when we're trying to sleep. And I'm in Common Fence Point, and I just wanna show you a video from today. You can correct me if I'm wrong, if this is not you, then,
It's not South Coast.
who is doing that?
National Grid, Rhode Island Energy may be doing work on the right of way.
Survey,
Yeah, that's our option.
Survey.
offshore survey. I was standing on the shoreline, putting up my Christmas tree on Taylor's Point. You can hear that?
Yep. Okay,
Listen to that,
I can hear it.
constant pounding.
Yes.
I was aggravated within the first 5 minutes of that. And I can't imagine hearing that for 12 hours. I also can't imagine hearing that after 9 o'clock when I'm trying to go to sleep. I don't sleep that early, but. There are a lot of kids who have to be in bed at that time. But that is what we're listening to now. So when they say it's not affecting residential areas, it absolutely is. I was standing right on the shoreline. And that means every house in that whole vicinity was hearing the same thing that I was hearing. That constant boom, boom, boom pounding. And that is annoying. And that is wrong. And we can't allow this. We need to protect our citizens. Portsmouth, and I would say big no.
Thank you. Rock, yes. They know this rocks. Like, rock. It's after 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
part of what I'm checking. The voice of the people of Portsmouth is critical. I appreciate you guys coming. We just, as council, just got the binder and appreciate all that knowledge, and insight that you have here. And as new council, I'm just wondering if we could postpone this vote. Just because of the late hour, and I don't feel we fully heard everyone, and I do want to give people of Portsmouth.
We can,
And it sounds like you don't have your next meeting set up yet, so that. You know,
I have concerns about.
I feel. in the best
if
interest-
we were to postpone this, it would have to go on the 13th meeting, which is already gonna be a long meeting as well. But,
Could we postpone to the 27th?
no, because the advisory, we have to write the advisory, or the solicitor has to write an advisory opinion.
I feel that's in the best interest of the town. Both to get the council.
Let's see how many more people come up. If we could put a 10:30 hard stop on this item, the other three items shouldn't take too long. Is there anybody else who's gonna get up and, hang on a second, is there anybody else who's gonna get up and speak? It's okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we postpone to the 27th.
Is there a second? No second, then the motion fails. Mr. Robinson.
Lee Roberts, 89 Mount Avenue. I live on Mason Ave and on Mount Ave. So when you go from Boys Land, the first road you come to on the left is my backyard.
Yes, sir.
And at nighttime, if the windows are open, I can hear the cars on Route 24. So they talked about only certain people could hear this. I would hear this a lot. And I've heard different things, people toot horns and everything else. But myself, I am 100% service-connected, disabled war vet. And sleeping at night is not something I can do very well. If I go to bed for 8 hours, I only sleep for about 4. The last thing I need is more noise to keep me awake. And it just shows some people don't care about other people. They are going to make noise no matter what. Now, I've worked a lot of jobs like this. I worked at Baltimore, Washington International Airport, doing all the underground. At Dulles Airport and everything. And I worked in Boston from Johnny Seafood on the south side, underground, so the buses could drive over to South Station. All right, I know all about this kind of work, and there's no big problems. And when you're going to work this much overtime, it's not going to be any cheaper. They're going to pay a lot more money, so actually it's going to cost them more. All right, and doing it at nighttime is wrong. It's wrong. I mean, I've had 7 bypasses. I've had veins taken out of my legs so they could get the calcification out. Calcification is bone. That's what's in my veins, bone. Nothing can go through it. What I've gone through is unbelievable. And what I'm still going through, all the small vessels in my brain are blocked. This side is 31. This side is, 51. This is 53. No, I cannot sleep right. I have a rotten life because I served in Vietnam where they threw Agent Orange on us. And while I was there, 3 brothers were with me. They're gone. 2009, 2011, 2014. Because of stuff like this. And our government doesn't care. And a lot of other people don't care. I want to live my life. And I don't want to be interrupted.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. If you're planning on speaking, please come up. I'm sorry, I did interrupt you. So if you're planning on speaking, please come up so we can finish this process. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Ken Mulder, 64 Peralt Street here in Portsmouth. I don't live close enough to what's going to be done on Boyd's Lane to really have a dog in this fight. But I'm here to stand up for other residents of this town that hopefully would stand up for me if it was happening next to my house. I left my home where I grew up here in Portsmouth and moved to Kansas for 20 years to raise my family there for a cheaper cost of living. By the way, these seats were a lot bigger the last time I was in this room.
They're brand new.
They're more comfortable now.
Yeah, they are.
I worked in the mechanical trades for close to 17 years there. I started with one of the largest mechanical contractors in eastern Kansas. We did a lot of directional boring. We did a lot of open trench work installing plumbing and electrical conduits. I then went to work for the state of Kansas, working my way up to mechanical systems supervisor. I ran the entire plumbing crew and HVAC crew for the state of Kansas before deciding to return home to the town I grew up in and pursue things here. If you've never been around directional boring, it's deafening. I find it funny that their expert is saying 68 decibels at the closest resident that is not even a quarter of a mile away. When I've worked those sites with much smaller diameter than 30 inches, if you're not wearing hearing protection, you're going to have hearing damage in short order. If this is not going to be monitored on a daily basis by them with constant reports, it needs to be monitored by us on a daily basis with constant reports. I guarantee the decibels will be much louder. Quarter of a mile away from directional bore for 16-inch pipe, we had foundation damages to structure. We had sheetrock damage to structure. We have residents closer than that here, and they haven't said anything else about any other structures that are in the vicinity of this, just residents. I would caution the town, and I understand, just like the host member agreement, when I came to that meeting, the state can ramrod this through and we have no say. But we need to stand up for each other in this town. And Mr. Hamilton, you voted in favor of the host member agreement, so I believe that gives you the right to revisit that Is that correct?
Good, yes.
I don't know about any of the new members of this council, but I would implore the council to revisit that host member agreement and remove our town from that agreement. You won't know we're here. Well, just like the old parable goes, we let the Campbell's nose under the tent. Guess what? They're here telling us, you're all damn well gonna know we're here because we're gonna make a hell of a lot of noise. How much more of the camel are we gonna let into the tent before we put a stop to this? Thank you very much. Yes,
Mr. President, Paul Kessler, 3241 Stanley. I've done this job for a company in my past life. The noise source, I've never seen a report that shows the TV level at the furthest point. It usually starts out with the source level. And when we had to do this with the last company I worked for, before I retired, we had to list every piece of equipment that we used. I don't know that that's listed in the report. I didn't see any equipment listed, so you correlate it to whether or not they're using the equipment that they said they were going to use. This is a noisy job. And I don't understand why they put sound waves 5 dB, because the industry that I was in, we always use 6. The reason we use 6 dB is half the energy value of a given number that you start with. You start out at 90 dB, 6 down, 84, it's half the energy that it started out at the source. I don't know why they say 5, but I can tell you this is going to be noisy. I don't believe they can ask, you have the equipment listed?
It is, yeah, it's on page 19 under table 6.
All of the pumps?
Yeah, table 7.
Tell me what the water pumps are, the
Water pumps.
the dewaterization.
Table 9.
Which piece of equipment is it?
Dewatering pumps from table 7.
Yeah, what model? Yeah, because the different engine and the different pump make different noise. We did this for the federal government. They required us to tell them what equipment we used.
They're Honda 3. They're Honda 3-inch trash pumps. Those are the pumps that are gonna be used for dewatering the open trench.
Generators?
The generators for the HDD are all cat generators. There's only one generator, one primary generator.
That's how many kW? 10?
No. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up.
The reason I'm saying is my neighbor's lawnmower only makes 70 dB when he mows his lawn. You can't sleep when he's mowing your lawn at night. I'll go back to my first point that I made in the first hearing. I think I only went to DEM. When we did this for the federal government, okay, it was never a public beach out. It was always a limited access piece of land. Typically, it was Navy. When we came to the beach with buried cables. This is a no, still in my book. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Jetson. Mr. Green.
On street, 110 Drive. Those of you that are on the council before know that I come up with every noise variance. The reason is our ordinance doesn't say what the noise variance is, it just gives you a noise variance. You can set off an atomic bomb and not, if you have a noise variance, and not violate the ordinance. Think about it. You give a noise variance. My suggestion, as it has been, is that you put a limit on the decibels that are allowed This gives Chief Peters, if he's called, a limit. The last noise variance that you gave was for a block party. And Ms. Hitchens and Chief Peters agreed that 75 decibels is a reasonable noise variance. I would suggest that you said, if you said, or if you give an opinion that there could be a noise variance, and Mr. Hamilton is going to correct me, I would suggest that you set a limit on that noise variance at no more than 75. They have said the highest noise a resident will hear is 58 to 61. That's well underneath. So 75 they should be happy with that if their analysis is correct. And it was a very conservative analysis from what I understood. So please, if you're thinking about giving a variance, set it no higher than 75. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mrs. Scarcella.
Hi, Chris Carceller, 63 Leeds Road, Portsmouth. This is vague. This is all vague. He just stole my thunder because that was my, if you know exactly what the DBA level max is going to be, why don't you say it so that it can be put in the variance? If you know exactly how many nights you're going to need to do this, put it in the variance. This is vague. Like he said, this could be 24/7. Now, I know Dominion Energy is putting in Virginia Beach. They've been doing it for the whole year. They asked for a variance, which was at 65 dBA, and Virginia gave it to them. And I know their project is different than ours, but there's a resident I've been following for 10 months. They're going crazy. This is what this guy's hearing 600 feet from his house. 24/7. And it just keeps going on and on. And this is at night. There you go. So I mean, I posted all these videos online. And what they're told when they go above a limit, which there is no limit, and this is what they're asking for, no limit, they just say, call the police. The police come and they don't know what to do. These residents are going crazy. We say it's gonna be at 61 dBAs, like a conversation. Cox Communications just went through our neighborhoods for the last few months doing horizontal drilling, a few feet down. My husband and I walk by them every single day. We can't talk while we're going by this. We can't talk to the people who are doing it. We have to yell just to get by. That's more than 61 dBAs. And this is just a little tiny wires they're putting underneath the ground. So I just don't buy these numbers. I don't. It's gotta be more than that. Now you're saying Portsmouth is not the permitting entity. And a lot of people wonder why. Why are we not allowing this? Why are we not the ones? Because our old town council sold us out. Yep. That's why. We have no say.
That is not true. That is not true.
He said, even if the town council does not want to give them this, they can still bypass us.
The state law in energy facility siting is a 3-person council that supersedes every single town, which is why we have the same issue in Old Mill Lane, which is why we can give an advisory opinion, but we cannot set the variance.
So why do we have to give an
sell out
advisory
the town.
opinion? Because
it's part of the process.
We are allowing them to come under Portsmouth.
We are not allowing them to come under Portsmouth. The state is allowing them to come under the beach. We don't own the beach, we don't own the road, we don't own the river, and we don't own the country club.
Do we have a host agreement with them?
Yes, we do.
Why?
Because there's 2,400 feet of road that the town has access to.
Okay.
The entire length of Boyd's Lane is a state road. The beach is an individual. Montauk is an individual organization, the country club. We have a host community agreement that gives the town a certain amount of money for hosting the cable for 2,400 feet of wire.
Right, but we have no say in this ultimately because
No,
we sold out.
no, that is not true.
Can I just address that point and one other one briefly? The process is pursuant to the Energy Facility Siting Act. So it's not because the town of Portsmouth signed a host community agreement, it's because there's a state law that supersedes the town's jurisdiction in this case, which makes the EFSB the permitting authority for the CRMC and DEM.
I appreciate you confirming what I just said, but
No,
I don't think they're gonna believe either one of us at this point. Mr. Carcella.
Scott Carcella, 63 Leach Road. So, be it as it may, we signed the host community agreement. And in that agreement, we agree to be good partners. That means on both ends. Now, I'm not gonna go into my opinion on whether we should have signed it or should not have signed it. But what I heard here today is why don't we just take them at their face value? They came up, they're a partner. They made a promise. They promised that it would not go on night after night after night. They brought their experts. They said we won't see over 70 dB, well, 61 dB. I say we set our limit at 69. But before I go on, I have a question. I want to direct this to our council, Mr. Gavin. Will we be writing a variance? Just like we would for anybody else, will we ultimately have the power to write a variance?
No.
Or won't?
No.
So why are we here?
Because the state law that he just referenced
Okay,
is a process that we have to grant an advisory opinion on the variance.
okay, so this is all just for show, because we really can't, we don't have much of a say, but if we could write a variance, what I would say is take them at their word. 65 dB, no more than 2 nights in a row. If a resident calls and it's above 65 dB and it's sustained on 2 consecutive calls, the project shut down. Because we're not gonna have any way out of this. What I'm hearing here right now is they can do whatever they want. We're just wasting our time coming to these meetings.
I don't believe they can do whatever they want.
Well, that's what you just said. so
No,
why
I
don't
did
we
not.
write a variance?
I did not just, do not put words in my mouth, Mr. Carcella. I did not say that.
Okay.
We can't, we are not providing a variance. That is that is prerogative of the Energy Facility Siting Board. We provide an opinion, advisory opinion as to whether or not we believe a variance should be granted or not. That is the Energy Facility Siting Board's job, not ours per state law.
So, I mean, people have voiced their concern, right? I think there's uncertainty. I don't know what this project's gonna sound like. I don't, because every project's probably different and I'm not an expert. But what I do know is what the dB sounds are. And they cited that they're not gonna exceed 65.
61.
61. So set it at 65. So, and then you mentioned, well, call the police. Well, if I call the police and tell them, hey, come on down and bring your meter, and their meter reads 90, and they have been granted variance, what is the chief gonna do? Nothing. My advice is set some limits, set some guidelines, protect us. Set a limit, take them at their word, and set a number of days. They said they wouldn't do this night and day. I don't know, but if you just give them the ability to say, okay, you got it, go for it. I'm just saying to think about it. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm gonna say it again. We are giving an advisory opinion. We can say we don't want it to exceed 65 decibels and we don't want it to go more than 2 nights a week. But it's only advisory opinion. The EFSB could do whatever they want.
That's my suggestion. At least give that advisory opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Carcella. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we have some about that. I just have a quick question. I'm wondering if the measurements on the sound were done before or after the trees were cut down in Congress? Because I would imagine that would matter.
Or when the leaves are gone, yeah. Well, we'll ask the engineer. I have the dates, I don't.
Good question. Again, trying to follow conservative methods here. Ambient noise levels were measured in January of 2022, so there was no foliage on the trees. There were not insects dominating the noise. This would be to measure the quietness.
That would be after all of the trees were inside.
Which trees are you speaking of?
All of the national grade trees that were taken down that.
That was before that, I believe, this National Grid trees.
2022, they were.
Yeah, so,
So.
yeah.
They did this
Right.
before that.
Right, sure. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Gleason.
Hi, thank you, everybody being here. I have an extra bedroom. You guys can come. And hang out with me.
I already live in Portsmouth.
You live down where I live,
I live pretty close to Boyd's Lane.
Boys Lane. Okay.
Mrs. Gleason, can you direct it to the council and please
Yes.
talk on the subject? It's pretty late.
Trying to be a little.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that if the noise level is high and the complaints come in, make sure that whoever's complaining will have everybody's phone number, and let you know. But also, when you will direct them to call the police, I want to make sure that no town official tells Chief Peters not to go down with his meter. I want to make sure.
What
You all
town-
heard this from me.
Okay. Is that a threat that you're making to the
It's not a
council?
threat.
It sounds that
I'm
way.
just reminding you that I'm a resident and I don't want anyone telling Chief Peters not to go down there and listen to this noise
Okay.
with his meter.
I don't think a
I
town
believe it
official
happened in
has,
the past.
it has never
That's
happened.
all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, clarification on earlier information.
Yeah, so the generator for HDD operations is around 300 kW. And I appreciate the two gentlemen that have some experience in this industry. And I will agree, 29 years ago, this equipment was a lot different than it is now. The technology has advanced, well, in 29 years. That's all we've done is made advancements in this industry. All of the equipment now has sound dampening noise on it. Just the geometry of these drills that we've learned to design. They enter at a steep angle at 15 degrees. They get deep very quickly. You can be standing on the bore path center line with these big maxi rigs and you can't feel a thing. And I want to express that these HDD crews, they do not want to work nighttime hours. And both of these locations are relatively very short HDDs based on our experience. And in saying that, we plan that phase of the conduit installation accordingly. We don't want to pull this pipe at night. There's a lot of logistical issues with that. There's trucking, there's all the support that goes along with the pipe installation. And we don't want to do that. So we plan these activities to start early in the morning or during working hours. And like I said, a typical installation of a 1,600-foot drill takes around 3 to 4 hours with no issues. So I appreciate everyone with their experience and just kind of want to touch base on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. Mrs. Miller, are you coming up to say one more quick thing?
Just one quick thing.
Okay. And then if you would like to wrap up with any further statements, and then we're going to close the public hearing.
One quick thing. You just said 600 kilowatts. My generator.
300.
No, he said 600.
300.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard 600, but even 300 is big.
Yes.
Because I have a 24 and with my door shut and if I'm down the street, I can hear my own generator go on. So I'm imagining that many times more is gonna be huge sound. I can hear mine down the street.
Council White. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say, welcome to guys. What an easy welcome to.
You know, in an opportunity to work in the best interest of our community members, help work in a synergy way with you. Is there any possibility that you would be open to putting a DD limit or, and I'm thinking outside the box, I really care about the residents of, if it is a 2-week period-ish, no, that, if people are inconvenienced, could we offer them hotel vouchers? Since it'll be off season, is that something that you would consider? Or is that too far out?
No, I appreciate the question, and we also hear the concerns, especially with children and animals, and understand that. As of now, we don't have funding set aside for hotel rooms or anything like that, but I think if concerns were brought to the town and there were, you know, a certain number of residents that wanted to be placed in a hotel, we would be willing to do that.
Can you also just address, if you would be open to putting if you get the variance to put a high limit on it? Like you said, if, you know, if all of a sudden there's 200 dB, you know, that's. And again, with the range that you mentioned.
Right, unfortunately, I think that's an item that's very tough to put a number to at this point in time. There's still a lot of variables at play with how the construction methods play out. And I certainly do hear the concerns around the 60 dB levels cited for the HDB work. Also in our analysis is consideration for the generators and pumps along the route, which there's different analysis for those pieces of equipment. So again, just a hard, challenging at this point in time.
Okay, seeing no other public comments, I have a motion to close the public hearing.
Just one more quick thing, and I didn't mention this.
I love you, Carol, but
I'm
yes,
sorry.
you're killing me.
I'll be fast, but I didn't even mention animals. I mean, think about your pets. Their hearing is, I was just trying to look it up, I'm not sure, 10, 20, 30 times more than ours. 40 times more. So what we're hearing and getting aggravated with, like that sound that I was hearing, my dog is gonna hear it 40 times more than that. That's disgusting. That's disgusting, and if we allow that, shame on us. Shame on us.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Was it my voice?
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Mr. President, I'd like to take a stab at making a motion, please.
all right, I'm gonna ask you to say it really slow and hopefully you've written most of it down so that the clerk and the solicitor can have this correct.
Right. Excuse me.
Without the frog.
The motion is to recommend denial of a sound variance to South Coast Wind Energy LLC for work after hours. However, if the EFSB approves a variance, the council requests EFSB sets the noise level be no higher than 70 dB at both residential locations mentioned.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Hamilton, or who was the second?
Mr. Ayero. No, Charlene, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Charlene. I'm sorry. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, a vote yes is a denial of opinion to deny the variance with modifications.
Yes.
Correct.
To deny the variance.
And to request that the EFSB look at us assigning suggesting a limit of 70 dB at the residential areas that were discussed tonight.
I'm gonna err to our solicitor, but, and if I'm wrong here, Kevin, if this motion were approved, our advisory opinion to the EFSB would be that we do not agree that there is a necessity for a sound variance. However, if you're going to approve one anyways, please consider limits to 70 decibels.
DBA.
If this motion was to be approved.
So if you want the motion.
Does that make sense, Mr. Solicitor? What I just said?
So if you want the motion.
I mean, I think it's permissible to. Can you, the motion, the microphone? Thanks, sorry. I mean, it's recommending or giving advisory for a denial with a request to for the EFSB to spend comments. I don't think it's out of order of the motion. Okay.
So,
They can still override us anyways.
so, the 70 would be 24/7? Or no, because our variance, would the 70 be 24/7?
Yes. Well, our.
Not to exceed 70, not to exceed 70 for 24, all day and all night, correct?
We said it was in.
That violates the ordinance.
They're allowed to do what they want up till 9 o'clock at night.
So-
Okay,
And
This is after hours.
this is after hours,
And
right?
the offending decibel has to be at the property line of the person. So you can't leave your house, stand on Boyd's Lane next to a tractor or generator and say, see, they're over 70 decibels. It has to be at your property line, not yours, because you're not going to be close enough. I hope.
I hope.
Okay.
So do we have to add anything for the evening? No, we
No.
can just leave it, right?
Right.
70.
Counselor Blunt?
I just want to make sure I understand it. So it could be through the entirety of the night.
After 9.
Well, South Coast testimony is that they don't want to work all night long and that they'll only go a couple hours after if absolutely necessary, and only a couple of nights.
But that's what we're denying.
We're not necessarily denying anything. We're giving an advisory opinion that they shouldn't be allowed to have the variance.
Denial.
Any discussion, any other discussion from the counselors? I will put my 2 cents in that I believe that the work can be done within the normal hours and the variance should not be allowed. Again, we are at the mercy of the EFSB, as I've tried to describe multiple times this evening. So, all of those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Nay. The ayes have it, 6-1, Mr. Piero in the negative. We will now move on. 6-1. Just follow. Just follow. New business number 7. There is an open school committee position because we have the wonderful Miss Blank with us now. There is one gentleman that ran for the position and was number 4 on the list of the 3 openings. I would like to entertain a motion to appoint Brett Fox as the next. I submit a motion to put Brett Fox in.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Sure. Mr. Gleason and then Ms. McAllen.
First of all, I think Brett Fox is an excellent candidate to be appointed. I'm just wondering, did we go through the process that we have gone through in past practice, like we have in other vacancies, town council? And I remember years back, I applied for a school committee. And it doesn't seem like I saw any applications come in. I didn't see anything out there. And I just caution us to carry on in our past procedures and not deviate from that when we go through and appoint someone, because that's what we've done in the past, and it doesn't seem like we're doing it here. So I just think in order to be fair and consistent, I think we should make sure we do that.
Mr. Gleason.
I had the same concern. I know reading the charter, we have the ability to appoint a person. The question is, has past precedents show that we take applications for the position? And you have the best.
We have taken applications for the position in the past that has opened it up. My thought process here, and the council can do whatever they want, it's their prerogative, is that we have one opening. We had 4 people run for the position. The number 4 person was, I don't know, a couple hundred votes short. In the past, we've put it out. Other councils have chosen to ignore that and appoint anybody they felt like. I just think that, in my opinion, the person ran for the job and he should be allowed to have it since nobody else put their name on the ballot.
President, if I may, as a former member of the school committee that did get appointed through the process in which is being described, I would say that Mr. Fox did something even harder than apply for the school committee he ran. And I think that we should, given the fact that there is a vacancy, and to expedite time, especially at this critical time of the year for school committees, I think it's imperative to have a full school committee on as soon as possible so that Mr. Fox can get completely aware of the budgetary process that the school committee does need to take part in very quickly. I know it's also the biggest part of our town budget. And I think if you can hit the ground running as soon as possible, I think that is imperative on this council to make that happen.
And I will also add that it was also a request of the superintendent to have the position filled as soon as possible. But there is a motion and a second to appoint Brett Fox. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all.
Mr. President,
Yes.
you skipped over number 7.
They list it differently depending on the agenda or online.
Number 7 was appointing.
Yes, number 7 is.
Sorry. Yeah.
Number 8 is Mr. Rayner and Mr. Woodhead of reassigning ARPA funds to help relining of projects in Island Park.
Mr. President, this is in accordance with the federal guidelines for the disbursement of ARPA funds. All ARPA funds have to be obligated by the end of this month. There is money remaining from the projects that were going on in Riverside. We purchased Riverside, 0 Riverside Street. We allocated money towards that. We didn't use all the money that was allocated previously for Island Park storm drain repair and catch basin and drain replacement. Bottom line is we need to take that money, the 90,000 from Island Park storm repair, the 331,158 from Portsmouth Park. Subtract out what has been spent already. That leaves 254,000. We have unobligated cesspool replacement funds that was allocated to be dispersed in a program for cesspool replacement. That money is not going to be obligated by the end of this month. That's 316,000. So what we propose is that we add those two sums together, the 254, 174,000, 316, 442,000, and then unobligated funds in the amount of $631. And then we add that together and obligate that for the purpose of allocating for Island Park and Portsmouth Park pipe relining projects. So the total would be $571,247.
Council have any questions? Question. Mr. Gleason.
The cesspool replacement funds, that's not the CISLIP money, is it? No, So that's a totally separate program. Thank you. I would support this motion.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we change the proposed, well, we go with the final, We go with Mr. Reyna's proposed final obligation of ARPA funds to include Island Park, Portsmouth Park, pipe relining.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, Mr. Dow. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So now all of our ARPA funds have been officially, allocated. So that we can hang on to them and use them for projects. And hopefully we don't need any more to finish this project. New business number 8, the fun part of the night. All right, here we go.
Mr. President, could I ask to table this for the next meeting? I don't see any, and I have a couple questions on the functions of the different committees. So could we table it? I'll make a motion, then we table that to the next meeting.
Second.
Shocking. I'm surprised it took that long, Sandra.
We had to turn it on.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, our next meeting was scheduled to be for Christmas, and we're not going to meet that day. So the December 23rd meeting is canceled. The January 13th town council meeting, since we have pushed off the trash talk until then, I believe, Madam Clerk, at the high school, we will be at the high school for that meeting, anticipating another large crowd as well. I would like to wish everybody a wonderful holiday, however you celebrate. Be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you in the new year.
Motion adjourned.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.